times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Good morning. You are tuned into the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the 6th of August. We're here to start things off this morning. My name is Nduh Okoh, in the studio this morning with CT Muga. CT, how are you?
Hi, CT Muga. I'm well.
Good. We called all the initials and all the names properly, no? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. How are things in your neck of the woods?
We need to be specific here. Neck of the woods refers to home, where I originate from.
Your neck of the woods
house,
in the enemy.
House where I live. Well, things are fine in both necks of the woods.
Uh-huh.
Of course, no such thing, but things are well.
Good to see you.
And how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up on the right side of the bed.
Okay.
Yes.
This one I need to understand. A
There's
bed has 4 sides.
Well, that
It
you
does.
get into that you
There's left, right, where your feet, head. So which side is the right side?
the right side being the good side, where you wake up and things are all right.
So it's not really
It's not
the
left,
geographical location.
No,
It
it's
is
more
the
like a
state of mind.
in which you've woken up. Yeah.
Hey, man, that one chimed in nicely. State of mind. Speak in rhyme all the time.
There you go.
Okay.
Who would know? All right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Latiff.
You know, every time I think of Eric, there's this song that Eric learned in 95 that has not left my head. Lottie. It has refused.
It has refused to go.
No, it hasn't because, hey, anyway.
Credit to that teacher, my friend.
No, that was a good teacher.
See?
Because he ensured you remembered him after all these decades. This is not years now.
And you see, this is a song that you will not forget now.
No, I can't forget it. Even if I only remember just one word, I can't forget it.
Lottie, give me strength to work.
See, do you see what you've done now? Well, good morning, Eric.
Good morning. Yeah, Lottie has given me strength. I'm ready to work.
Oh, we are happy.
Yeah, it's good to understand that you have sides of beds that determine your day.
Well, I don't know about it determining the day. I just know that, once you get out of bed, you're not feeling like really groggy or anything,
It's a
But,
good side.
Yeah, things could change in 3 minutes, but,
But city in this country, the beds have only 3 sides or 2.
Here we go.
Explain.
One side, the head side, is already against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The other side, one of the other sides is also against the wall. Kenyans don't put beds in the middle of a room. What do you mean? Putting a bed in the middle of a room? Bed has got to be the end of the room.
you've introduced a concept that I hadn't considered. I wasn't thinking. Actually, no, you're right. In this sense, if you consider that the wall isn't part of the 4 walls of a room, then maybe. But I was thinking actually of the actual bed, and that it actually does have 4 sides. That's where my thinking emanated from. But the concept that you've introduced is useful. Thank you. Useful.
Okay. Welcome to the show. We'll be discussing a lot of interesting things today. And we hope that you join in our conversations throughout the show between now up to 10 o'clock. We will be talking to the immediate former chairman of Safaricom Limited, man who has served in very many boards, man who has served in the public service, man who has had an exemplary career and steered the Safaricom company from just a kawaida company into what Safaricom is today. As chairman and as a board member for how many years again? 13.
And I believe, yes. You know what is often, I think, not remembered? You look at the CEO and you forget that that is the person who's supposed to ensure that things are operationalized.
Yeah.
But the people who steer and the people who are in charge of policy, if they get it wrong, there's very little the CEO will be able to make it right.
Yeah, the organization just basically...
Yes, the silent partners or the almost invisible partners who actually ensure that things work as they should.
Yeah.
That's the board.
Yeah.
And at the helm of that board, there's usually a chair. And it speaks volumes that the success
Yeah.
of any organization can be traced back to the leadership.
So we'll hear from the man today, and he'll give us his life story as well.
Yes.
on the various things that he has done
Very true.
to get where he is. Also, we'll have a conversation with the Pubs and Restaurants Association. There has been a lot of back and forth, writing to the CS in charge of hospitality industry, Najib Balala issuing some clarifications, and then a group of owners of restaurants and pubs launching an online campaign saying, you know what, we want our premises reopened. And they're now they've launched a petition. So we'll be speaking to their leadership to understand what's cutting in that industry. Let's talk about COVID-19, as we always do.
All right. So in Kenya, 605 cases yesterday is what we saw, taking the national tally now to 23,873. Recovered 9,930, with unfortunately 391 deaths. And we heard CS Kagwe speaking from the Kenyatta University yesterday, and talking about quite a number of things, but here concerned that, we could be at a point where this is now expected, that more and more cases would be realized. However, one thing that he did note is that, almost 500 people now have been put on the home care protocols, and he seems to be very happy with this. So the numbers continue to rise in Kenya. The numbers continue to rise around the world. 18.7 million cases now around the world, with a good number of 11.3 million having recovered, and unfortunately 705,000 deaths. We saw some good numbers coming out of South Africa yesterday, or rather good news. And one thing, we mentioned this yesterday morning, but then we saw it also later on in the day, that in as much as more and more people continue to get into hospital, for example, the health system is not overburdened. They are seeing a downward trend now in the number of cases on a daily basis. And it's a good thing that they've been able to realize that even though even though quite a number of people have been admitted in hospital, they're not at a point whereby they're not able to take anybody in. And so they've been able to succeed in terms of not turning anybody away who came and needed any kind of medical attention.
You know what is actually interesting about this COVID situation is how everything now contributes to the health situation that we have in the country. You have a pre-existing condition. The health system is overwhelmed because they have to look into COVID. People cannot go about their jobs as they normally did, which means their incomes are affected, again, because of COVID. So it means that even if you have a health problem that needs attention but also requires money, it will be affected. You may not be able to have it attended to as you ought to.
Yeah.
It's a downward spiraling vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And it is not pleasant. And then if you take it further to communities that we refer to as underserviced or people who are impoverished, the situation actually goes beyond the word dire. It's stratospherically pathetic and horrible. You even wonder how it is that people actually then survive. Because the truth is, if you look at our hospitals right now, I doubt if there are very many hospitals that can talk about any capacity they have. Most of them have actually reached capacity and gone beyond it.
And not all of them is because of COVID.
No, not necessarily COVID.
Basically just back to factory settings.
Exactly. So conditions that existed, then there are these conditions that are brought about simply because you're not able to ensure that your livelihood is maintained and hence your life.
Yeah.
Then you throw in COVID, then you throw in the weather. It's like everything that could possibly, Murphy's Law, anything that could possibly go wrong at this particular moment is actually going wrong, and it keeps heading in that direction.
It's a very bad situation, I think, that we are in globally. the
globally.
entire world.
Yes.
This I don't know. This year, 2020. What?
It's quite the year. And just when you think that other countries are doing better, they are not.
They're not.
They're not. What also comes out of this discussion is you notice that you have countries where at least the leadership is showing clearly that they have not only intention, but they're purposing their resources towards helping their people.
Yeah.
Yes. You see, it's this clarity.
Yeah. Now that's where now those are the ones that stand out.
Yes.
Well, you can see there's deliberate effort being made, and there are clear gains.
Yes,
being
there are.
realized
Yes.
by the people, and then there are those that you can clearly see it's just a lot of words, shifting goalposts, shifting blame, shifting strategies left, right, and center, and not appearing to have had any strategy that had been well thought out in the first place. All along, you can just see it's people who are thinking of how they can make a shilling every
Right.
single day.
I'm going to make a slight correction on those. Looking at global cases now of 18,975,000, not 777,000. So 18,975,254. Those are the global cases, and looking very closely at 19 million. I probably will be at that number by the end of the day, with 711 deaths around the world. Getting out of summer in some countries in the world, especially the US and the Western Hemisphere, quite a number of schools opened, and they've seen a surge in of infections. And so now the US, you have half of the legislation saying, well, look, we told you so. This is what we knew was going to happen. And so grappling with, should we open schools, a multi-billion-dollar operation whereby you have suppliers already, lined up and starting the business all over again. And the question is, were we ready to go back to school? But you have also the hardline stance by the Trump administration that, look, schools are open, this is what we're doing, so let's not even backtrack in terms of our thinking.
COVID is strange, not only in its newness, but how it disregards tradition. Even countries that are known to be careful, and we marvel at how they regimentally sort out their matters, like Israel. They opened their schools with the disastrous consequences as well. These are careful people.
Right.
The people who are known to plan ahead of time. People who are known to have sought the best way of doing these things. COVID doesn't understand these things. COVID has to be understood on its terms. Not the ideas that we think it ought to be understood in.
Yeah.
No. You have to understand COVID for what it actually is. There is no single country on this planet that has opened up its economy after what we are being told is the first wave, who have not regretted it immensely, because the opening up is what has led to this now what you call the second wave, and which is now bringing about an imminent third wave.
Right.
So must you go through that experience yourself to understand that any newfangled crazy ideas may not work, that there's a way in which this virus works, and it's telling us how it works. We can see.
Which is just trying to get through those motions, because you know clearly that you'll go through wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. So just speed it up.
Do it now.
Just do it now. Open, close, wave 2. Open, close, wave 3. All right. So how many more?
Yes, and
7?
then you can tell your people, you wanted us to open, we opened.
We open,
So you can see the consequences. Now we have to shut it again.
you
Yep.
deal.
Yeah, because also you have to remember that governments are dealing with human beings. That are
Yes,
thinking
they are.
completely
Yes, they are.
different.
And the normal functions of government don't go away because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
The normal demands also don't go away because of COVID.
6:15. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a break. We'll be looking at the weather, and then we start looking at the big stories of the day. Wherever you are, however you woke up this morning, whichever side of the bed you got up from, welcome. This is going to be an interesting day.
.24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
been an uncertain couple of months, and we are still experiencing the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in our lives. However, we're bouncing back. Our resilience like never before has shown even brighter. And in our adaptation to a new normal, we find a purpose to believe in a better tomorrow. Which is why the Standard Group is bringing you the 47 million reasons. It's all about finding something and someone to be hopeful for during this pandemic. From first responders, mental health, unity to hope. We owe it to ourselves to keep going, getting stronger than ever. 47 million reasons, celebrating you and me. You are our reason. And we have 47 million of them. Brought to you by Radio Maisha, Spice FM, Vibes Radio, KTN Home, and BTV.
The weather with Spice FM.
Good morning. Let's see what the skies look like today. It's clear in Nairobi at 12, slightly overcast, but not for long. Highs of 24 and lows of 12. Njeri is going to be a partly cloudy morning. It'll have a sprinkle later on with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Clear skies in Nakuru at the moment. It'll change later though into showers with highs of 22 and lows of 12. 13 degrees and mostly cloudy in Eldoret. Thunderstorms forecasted for later with highs of 19 and lows of 12. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu at 19 degrees. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 18. Kakamega is going to be a wet afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 15. 23 degrees and partly cloudy in Mombasa. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 22 with showers expected through most parts of today. Partly cloudy in Malindi at 24 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 23. In Kampala this morning, it's partly cloudy at 18 degrees. It'll get a little warmer though, but the rain will cool it down later. The highs of 27 and lows of 18. It's mostly cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 22 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 21. We'll take a look into Joburg, where at 7 degrees, it's clear skies all through today and sunny conditions with highs of 20 and coming down to a crisp low of 4. Lagos is clear this morning at 24. We'll have cloudy conditions, however, later with highs of 28 and lows of 23. We'll take a look into Europe, where in London, 19 degrees. It's cloudy conditions all through the morning. It'll be very warm later. London standard, highs of 30 and lows of 17. Paris, clear skies at 18 degrees. A very warm morning leading into an even warmer afternoon with highs of 34 and lows of 17. And finally, for now, in New York, still Wednesday night. It's warm, however, at 26. And they'll wake up to highs of 31 through Thursday and lows of 21.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
19 minutes after 6. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Before we look at the big headlines, let's look at the big proverb.
Eric, every time
If
you
it's not
mention a
about an
proverb,
elephant.
No. You the understanding of proverbs is that it's supposed to have some mystical meaning, or it's supposed to be so profound that you have to think about it at great length before you can even figure out what on earth it's about. But the truth of the matter is this. Proverbs, by their very nature, arise from experiences that people try to more or less condense into a sentence or two.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why these African proverbs sometimes resonate, sometimes they don't, because it's like trying to put together the experience that some people have had and trying to ensure that it resonates with everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, that usually is, at the very best, tricky.
Proem.
Very, very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't, having gone into that great song and dance, why don't I tell you about today's proverb? This proverb, I am informed, comes from the middle part of this particular continent, in the Congolese area. Mm-hmm. Silence and noise are brothers.
There you go. There was silence and then there was the brother.
Get out of here. What are you trying to say?
Silence and noise are brothers.
Silence et fracas et les frères.
Okay.
All right. When you put it that way,
Okay.
I have to agree with you.
Yeah?
Where silence is silence.
And the fracas is
Fracas
fracas.
is noise. Sont les frères.
Yes.
Are brothers.
Yes. Lovely, isn't it?
Isn't it?
You know, this is the good thing about knowing more than one language. But it's even better when you just listen to the second language and you have no clue what is being said.
You just accept.
Yes, it is good. It is good.
If it's called Ceylon, it's okay.
Yes, you see, that's the thing. You know at least one word in that language. We. So you have contributed. We. Yes.
We.
That's your contribution
Sawa.
to that and time.
Okay. Big stories of the day. Where you want to start?
Oh, let's start at the very beginning. Well, okay, so the Beirut blast, and this is what we're looking at the front page of the Standard. Injured Kenyans ordeal in Lebanon blast that killed 100. There's a devastation as Kenyans caught up in the Beirut tragedy narrate their experiences as Nairobi envoy reveals several countrymen were injured in horror incident that flattened parts of the Middle Eastern country's capital. We know that this happened a couple of, actually 2 days ago now, and Beirut is still reeling from the shock of this, and there are quite a number of conspiracies that continue to go on. But what the Lebanese government is dealing with right now is to really locate, first of all, the injured. It's 100 now. That's what the count is. Likely to increase as they find out more and more of these cases. But, you know, the country is still in a state of shock. The country already was in a state of... in many shock waves had, pelted through the country, but this was the one that almost, unfortunately, brought things to flattened status. So yeah, unfortunately, with this, a number of Kenyans were caught up in this fracas. Fred Kamau, unfortunately, was caught up in this, and they were able to speak about what really was terror. It was heart-stopping and something that can never be forgotten. He says that he first heard the explosion, he thought it was a bomb. It was followed by shattering blasts and buildings collapsing. He refers to it as something that you would only see in an action movie. So what we saw on TV looked like something that was in a movie, but then you can imagine the reality for many people that were right there in the middle of all of this. We've seen many videos that have come out of this, but it's quite huge in terms of devastation. And just a few of those details: caused by 2,750 metric tons of explosive ammonium nitrate stored at a warehouse. Ammonium nitrate is highly volatile. It's a highly volatile material used in agricultural fertilizers and bombs. 117 dead so far, 4,000 injured, 300,000 people left homeless. Hospitals report congestion complicating their fight against COVID. They had just come out of a 5-day lockdown, and then this happened. Lebanon declares a 2-week state of emergency. All port officials have been put under house arrest awaiting investigation. Lebanon custom chief says he ordered ammonium nitrate to be removed but got no response. Rescuers are looking for more bodies under rubble and in waters along the coast. So,
Okay, figures according to BBC this morning, they reach 135. What has happened is not really that different from what has happened with COVID in this sense. Think about the state of this particular government that could accumulate something so combustive, not store it properly. Imagine the thinking behind it. You would imagine that they would have understood since they were importing it, and I believe they did. But it can't be the only thing. Look at the state of Lebanon. Look at the way that country has been run. Look at the way it has been overrun by corruption and mismanagement. Now, it is truly unfortunate, but this is what happens. When you have a situation where the things that you ought to do to ensure that this state that you are in charge of functions well, if that isn't taken care of, then what happens is you have a situation that need not be a catastrophe, but it will turn into one.
I mean, it's really sad that you say that, Sisi, because that's it. A Lebanese custom chief says he ordered this nitrate to be removed, but he didn't get a response. So he didn't follow up.
When I listen to this, though, I hear same bureaucracy that you'll find in very many other parts of the world.
Absolutely. That's the thing.
I'm sure if we actually conducted an audit of how many things should be happening in even the big countries and that are not happening, you will find just that 6 years, no response, 6 years, get to a point where you're like, but it's okay. 6
Nothing
years,
has happened, so
everybody forgets what that is, and then one day, just one spark causes what it's caused.
Eric, I like the way you've put it because it means the problem never really goes away.
Yeah.
It's like sitting somewhere waiting to erupt. And it's the same thing because it's decision-making processes and how people treat things that they consider to be of importance to them, importance rather. Then you have a situation where the things that ought to have been done are now required. They come calling. There's nothing you can do because you are ill-prepared.
Yep. Bureaucracies. I hear what you're saying about the inefficiencies of a government, about a government that is not responsive to its people. But if you look at the dynamics of the Lebanese government over the number of years, I'm just seeing this is a case of clear and total bureaucratic mess.
You know, Eric, if Lebanon wasn't considered to be one of the epicenters of bad leadership and corruption in that region, then even this discussion wouldn't have taken this turn. But unfortunately, even before this accident, this horrible, terrible incident, that unfortunately has been at the fore. Even this issue of COVID, the complaints that the citizenry have had, the economy itself, their currency has gotten to a point where it has almost lost all value.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in essence, if you look at the West and the way they categorize these nations, one could say that it was heading towards being a failed state, as you call it. Okay.
Yeah, without mentioning any part that they play in it. Anyway, gone.
If indeed, for instance, you have a nation that has systems in place and they have a problem, you start on from a different point and the discussion is different. Because despite their effort, and you can see the effort, this is what. And then you also see them taking off from where they are to try and resolve other issues.
Yeah.
But this one, it's just compounded a problem that already existed.
It does compound that, but I'm trying to take ourselves back to a conversation where Lebanon is a very vibrant economy, very vibrant political system. We cannot compare Lebanon to Yemen, for instance.
You see,
if you think about people like Rafik Hariri and the way he was killed, and the kind of back and forth that Lebanese have, the Hezbollah hosting Hezbollah, they are bombed by Israel and they survive. It's not a failed state or anything close to that, or even
actually it isn't.
It is vibrancy of,
but it's
and the fact that people actually just as the fact that you can see people coming out to the streets and expressing themselves, it tells you something about the system of government and the people, and their ability to respond, ability to take up, not arms, but, to rise up against their own government, speak out against their government, take action against things that they feel are not working. This is very different from very many other countries in that region.
Eric, you are spot on. That's why my focus has been on the management and the politicians and the people who manage the country. Not the citizenry are exactly as you put it. They are vibrant. But the leadership has come under fire on many, many occasions. You cannot say this is the 1970s and 80s when it was essentially a war zone. No, it isn't. They've come out of that. But again, it boils down to the things we keep discussing with regard to our own country, where you know what could be done to make things better, and you can see it's not being done. If anything, the complete opposite is being done. So it's from that perspective that I'm saying that indeed, the state that it's in and anything that is good is as a result of what the people represent.
Yeah.
So despite all these things, the people have faced these challenges head on. If the support had been in equal measure from the leadership, then you'd be talking about something quite different.
And less interference from neighbors.
That isn't going to happen soon.
Another big powers.
That isn't going to happen soon.
Because that also determines, and I think there's a lot of control of who's in leadership in Lebanon from not just the Lebanese,
from the West,
but from other quarters as well. And that has a huge impact on, the person who's here, and they're feeling that they're not beholden to the people, but to their other masters who are external masters. Unfortunately, the people end up suffering as you're saying. 6:30, it's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to take a look at traffic, what's happening on the road, and then we look at other big stories of the day. Are you ready with traffic? What's happening on the road? Okay.
Yes.
Traffic.
Right, we're at that time of the day where everything is moving along very swiftly. Komarok and then towards the Dandora area, traffic flow is busy, but it's moving. Kariobangi Outer Ring also moving very well this morning. Namanga Road at Kitengela traffic moving very well. Coming down the way to Mombasa Road and heading your way. Heading actually into the CBD. We don't have problems there. All right, let's look at Thika Road. Coming in and outbound, traffic is moving. It is quite busy, but it's not at bumper-to-bumper stage yet. Likely to get there because the construction still continues at certain parts. But we'll give you more information as we get along. Coming out of Westlands on the 87 and then past Kikuyu. We're looking at the fog being low this morning, but it'll open up as you get onto Wayaki Way and then just past Kangemi. You'll be fine getting to the Westlands roundabout without much of an issue right now. We'll look at what it all develops into around 7 o'clock. But for now, you shouldn't have much of an issue. Don't forget, you can get in touch, SpiceFMKE on Twitter.
Spice FM. Malindi. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Stories in the papers this morning. Some are good, some are political, some are, quite interesting. Like, there's a story in the Standard this morning on why lemons, ginger, and garlic are all the rage. It's very clear we're fighting COVID-19, and we've been told that if you boost your immunity by taking in a lot of vitamin C, that's going to help you. So, lemons, ginger, garlic, price shoots off the roof. Page 2. A widow turns to obituary pages to demand justice 15 years later. This is a very moving story of a widow from Kirinyaga who lost her husband 15 years ago. And every year on the commemoration of the man's anniversary, she takes out an obituary and, just does a proper tribute to him, but also keeps saying, you know what, we still haven't found justice for what happened to you. The man was Wakili Daniel Wachira Kara. Not Kara, but Karani. Daniel Wachira Karani. And the wife is Rose Wanjiro. She is a teacher. He is a lawyer. And about 15 years ago, in 2005, their life changed forever on July 29th. Apparently, the man was working as a lawyer in around Kirinyaga County, and she was also working in the same region. This one day, he goes to court in Njeri, comes back in the evening, but he's late. He's delayed to come home, gets home late in the evening. She is there with her 3 children. One of them is just 3 months old. And then she hears the hoot at the gate. She goes to open the gate, expecting that it's her husband. Unbeknownst to her, there were thugs who had waylaid the husband, and they were waiting at the gate. As soon as she opens the gate, she's attacked by these thugs, beaten thoroughly, badly, taken to a hospital in a coma. She passed out. She's taken to a hospital. 3 days later, in her hospital bed, she's told, you know what, your husband didn't make it. He died. And that time, she's unable to walk. She cannot talk, but after a couple of days, she's like, all right, guys, just take me back home. They set up a ward in one of the rooms in the house, and she's taken back home where she takes care of the children. Stories emerged later that there was these thugs that come in, and some of them had actually had been sent by someone to come and beat the husband and harass the husband, paid 3,000 shillings, and it was because the husband was handling a dispute over a piece of land owned by a widow. So because of that, thugs were sent to kill the husband. They ended up even beating the wife thoroughly. Husband died, wife was left. Quest for justice has yielded nothing 15 years later. And she keeps every year on the anniversary of this, on the 29th of July, she posts a tribute on the obituary pages of the papers.
Tough one.
This one for Juicy, she actually wrote there and says, "We noticed that you did so many pro bono cases for orphans and widows in different courts. You truly are a hero. We celebrate you. Take note that the judiciary failed you big time. In fact, it betrayed you. Your murder case could not get a judgment because a doctor could not be traced for DNA evidence. The Law Society of Kenya too. Did you say that you had appointed for us a family lawyer?" Psst. She has championed this. She has then become a very passionate advocate for widows, orphans, and children. She has won the National Hero Award, the Shujaa Award in 2018, the Presidential Award OGW, and the National Hero Award in 2019. She now is called Shujaa Rose Wanjiru for what she champions. A moving story, but also just points out to that, what shall we call it? I don't want to use the word failure. But
Why not?
Quest for justice, because I don't know the details behind it, so I don't know. But just the quest for justice and how long it takes you to get justice, and how frustrating it is when the person who's directly involved does not have the answers. Because clearly shows that she does not even know what's happening.
15 years down the line, and what seems to come to the fore is the vagaries of this particular case.
Yeah.
That, I think, in my books, amounts to failure.
Failure of the system.
Failure of the system, yes. You see, this culture of treating genuine problems with words and throwing words at problems seemed to have begun a long time ago. Yes. There's a gentleman whom I come into contact with fairly often because he sells me newspapers. And there's a statement that he once told me, and it's something I've given thought to. And he uses Swahili phrase. He told me, mnyonge hana chake. I thought, goodness. And I actually asked him, what do you mean? He said, I can get harassed, I can get jailed, I might even die, and nobody will even notice.
Yeah.
I said, but you have relatives. He said, yeah, but they're not here. Now, this is not someone who was a nobody.
Yep. This is somebody who was somebody in the local community.
Yes, exactly.
In the region.
So it begs the question now, what if you are not such a person?
I'll tell you somebody who was not such a person. Remember the gentleman who was killed by police officers in Madare?
Yes, I remember that gentleman clearly. Yes.
The homeless man who ends up actually has a home back in Meru.
Yes.
Has a family back in Meru.
Something went
gone
wrong. Yes.
Huyo ni mnyonge ambaye hana haki. Police officers just come, they find you, they shoot you, and that story ends like that.
And that guy had done absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing. Zero. Didn't even have a history of doing anything wrong. Nothing.
So I agree with what your vendor was telling you. Something can happen to him. He disappears. You guys will just go and find a copy of you.
Okay. Alienda wapi?
Labda alienda ushago. And that's
end of that story.
End of that story. You move on with life. And that would be it. Until the family starts, reaching out and asking, do you guys know what happened to this man? And that would be it. Mnyonge.
Unfortunately. So,
okay.
Shock verdict on 5 senators who snubbed Uhuru. The fate of the 5 Jubilee senators who snubbed a meeting convened by the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, in May, will be sealed next week. The top placed sources at the party have revealed that the hammer is about to fall on nominated senators Millicent Omanga, Mary Senator Iyane, Father Dekao Iman, Naomi Jilo Wago, and Alice Milgo for openly defying their party leader during the Senate leadership surge. A National Executive Council, NEC, will endorse an indictment meted on them by a disciplinary committee which sat down to probe their conduct following show cause letters by party chairman Nelson Zuya. So that's going to happen.
Who's the
next
party
week.
chairman again?
Nelson Zuya.
Who is this gentleman?
You were asking this question the
Yeah.
other day. You asked this question, Eric, the other day. Who is the chairman,
Who's the chairman
of
of
Jubilee?
Jubilee?
Well, voila.
Nelson Zuya. Even he sometimes needs to be reminded.
That he's the party chairman.
Brother.
Chairman.
It's you. Hey, they said the chairman should speak and nudge him.
West.
You have
They've called the chairman. Eh? Get up.
it. You have it.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So, the five absconded the State House meeting called by Kenyatta to ratify the removal of Deputy President William Ruto's allies. Nicely framed. Senator Senator Kipchumba Murkomen and his Nakuru counterpart Susan Kehika from Leader of Majority and Majority Whip positions respectively. They were replaced by West Pokot Senator Samuel Pogishio and his Muranga counterpart Irungu Kangata. Okay, so interesting to see
It's
how
an
this
easy
hammer
one
will
to go
fall.
for. I mean, these are nominated senators. You're there purely because we nominated.
Do you get the impression that they forgot this at some point?
That they were that
They
they were
were
chosen. That
yes.
they
No, they're not chosen.
They thought that they
Appointed.
have a right to be here. They were picked
Yes.
and given this position.
were
Now
they
they're being
forgot.
showed.
Now they're being unpicked.
Back to the tree.
Yep. Yep. Let's see if actually this verdict comes the way it has been reported here next week and the action that's then taken. Because all that is required is Jubilee to submit fresh names from the party list to replace the axed senators. Remember, there's already a party list. I'm sure there are guys who are already down on that list and they're like,
Please now.
Please.
Let something happen. So that I
What
can
is
move
it?
up.
Well, there are people who've been working very hard at displaying all the wonderful qualities that you need to have to be nominated.
Yep.
And here you have people who are doing the complete opposite. Surely. You know, these political processes are interesting. And yet,
Yeah.
politically speaking, the game isn't really over. This is just phase one.
Yeah.
Okay, they may even leave, they may even be removed, but it would be interesting to see what happens thereafter.
Yes.
Interesting one. As we still talk about politics, KANU is entering into a new pact with a party called PDP. You know PDP?
Oh, good Lord.
I've heard of PDP.
Which one is that?
Not the one in Nigeria.
No. I know that particular party because the current MP of the constituency I hail from at some point actually vied for that seat.
And the PDP.
Yes.
Who's this?
He's called the Honorable Onyango Koyo. And the same, the governor of Migori, I believe, also, when he lost the ODM nominations, also stood, I think, on a similar party ticket the first time he was actually the governor.
Of PDP.
PDP.
PDP is the People Democratic Party.
Yes. It exists.
It does exist. And the leader of this party is Omingo Magara. Now, Omingo Magara, we know him. He has also served as an MP. But when I heard of people, when you hear people and party, I just think of For the People, because I remember, that's the one I remember. For the People!
Yes.
Watu. Watu. Wengi. Wengi. Sana. That's a clarion call for For the People. Simon Nyachai's party as well. So KANU has got into a pact with this chama called PDP, and that they're saying, you know, the two party leaders agreed to work together and to bring to life a coalition that will give them an upper hand in the next general election. Our aspirations, our thinking, our ideology are the same. We both support the same cause. We both support the BBI. So we know KANU is Jogo. What is PDP?
I honestly have no idea, really.
We'll see.
If it wasn't for the individuals who I believe stood on this party tickets, I wouldn't have
You
known
don't
about
have,
it.
yeah.
Yes, like, for instance, do you know how many parties we have registered in this country? I mentioned 60. There's even some farm party. Man, there are many.
Farm party.
I know You think I'm actually trying to sort of like infuse a little amusement into the
But
conversation.
it's actually
It's
true.
true. There's a party
Yes.
called the Farm Party of
Yes,
Kenya.
Of Kenya.
Nice. Okay.
Hey, let's take another break. At 14 minutes to 7 o'clock, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this morning is Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, Eric Latiff. We are looking at the big stories that's been covered, that have been covered in the newspapers today, and also what's local, what's regional, what's international. Big news. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, other big stories this morning in the newspapers. Nduh, you had a one.
So, it seems that the Nakuru governor, Lee Kinyanjui, has said that the Senate is to blame for failing to pass the third generation county revenue sharing formula. In a statement released yesterday, Mr. Kinyanjui accused senators of fighting devolution by starving counties of cash. I quote, adjournment of the debate on the formula is a clear manifestation of the many intrigues that have dogged the process. It is time the Senate rises to its solemn responsibility of being the defender of devolution. The Senate, for a record 7th time on Tuesday, failed to reach consensus on the revenue sharing proposal among the 47 counties and ended up adjourning the debate. Kinyanjui, who is for the one man, one vote, one shilling proposal, urged senators to put politics aside and give a way forward on the release of much awaited funds.
Talk about tongue in cheek. What does he think his statements amount to? If not
Politics.
political statements. Yes.
Yes,
It's a political process. You can't put politics aside.
Yes,
He's
how
doing
do you?
the same thing,
Yes.
basically.
Although also it's
accusing
pretty
the
obvious.
Senate of doing.
Of course. It's the Senate that is responsible for this standoff because it's their decision to make.
It is their decision.
So when you say
Obviously.
it's their fault, yes, it is.
Of course.
But the bit that I have issue with is this matter of starving the counties of money. That's not true.
There's a way to get the money.
Of course there is. And just the other day, the Treasury reportedly released money into the counties.
2.9 billion, actually.
Yes, to be precise. So, I mean, this matter that he is saying, I actually have to ask, what on earth is he talking about?
You see, now you've got also to look at it the other way around. All right. No county executive can present a budget to the county assembly because you don't know what you're budgeting for. That is an issue. As much as, yes, you can access half of the money that you received last year, but you cannot start planning for money you don't have or money you don't even know. So what are you presenting a budget for 80 billion?
What percentage?
Are you
Eric?
presenting a budget for
I don't know
90?
the answer to this, but what percentage of county budgets comprise of what you call recurrent expenditure?
Huge percentage.
Precisely. So these are things that you need to do on a daily basis.
Yep.
What is likely to suffer may be these long-term projects that need a continuum and which will definitely and most certainly grind to a halt.
And require
Yes,
time.
yes, they do.
Because the others are just monthly. So you can keep giving us money on a monthly basis. That's just as good as the national government paying our workers. And that's not our mandate. Our mandate is also on development. So for as long as we don't know whether we can present a budget to the assembly so that we can start our programs for the year, you are basically stifling our work.
You know, Eric, this man should actually consider giving you an advisory position because had he presented this case this way, I would have been gobstopped. I would just have said, well done, Excellency Governor.
But now that he did not hire Eric, he looks like he's got some egg on his face with these sentiments. That
Throw
he's
in a
put
little
out.
mud while you're at it, please.
Right.
Why?
For the simple reason that he has a case that he could have presented and didn't present it
He
well.
didn't. But there might be a solution because a 9-member team has been picked to unlock the stalemate.
A what?
9-member team.
Oh,
Yes.
Of the senators.
what are those groupings called? There are various names. Okay,
Committee,
we know
something. It's usually a
commission,
committee or a
and
commission
then
or
task force.
You see why you need that job, Eric? So
Task force.
the Senate
Tough
leadership
force,
has
given a task.
formed. The Senate
Which they have to
leadership
force.
has formed a 9-member mediation committee to look into the stalemate of the third basis revenue sharing formula that has sharply divided lawmakers. Yesterday, in a meeting chaired by Senate Speaker Ken Osaka, the team also planned a one-day retreat, of course, in a bid to broker a deal that would ensure no county loses funds. The committee is to be chaired by Deputy Speaker Margaret Kamar, who will have an uphill task to convince senators to back one formula which is not antagonistic. Lusaka voluntarily stepped down for Kamar to chair the crucial committee that will bridge the wide gap between the pro-population and the pro-landmass protagonists. This is after the Senate for the 7th time failed to pass the formula.
So,
Revenue sharing.
9-member, we know that the chair is Professor Margaret Kamar. So the other must have 4-4. So who are the 4 on each side?
So, it is made up of minority whip, Mutula Kilonzo. Okay, rather, he said the ad hoc committee will have both teams of equal number to broker an agreeable process that will not split the county. Doesn't tell us now who is part of which.
Membership not yet announced.
No. We'll wait and see.
Surely. We'd like to know who are these 4.
On which side, right?
Yeah.
4 on each side. I'm sure we'll find out
So,
soon.
I know that tells you something. That the only thing that they are expected to come out of that meeting with is consensus.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be, it's not the deputy speaker's vote that's going to break the deadlock.
No.
No, you guys, I'm just sitting here, I'm your umpire. 4 on this side, 4 on that side.
Referee.
Agree. We come out
We
of
must
here
come
with
out and
1.
with white smoke. We must
Yep.
come out. So,
Oh, yeah. And we were also seeing that the ODM leader, it's being reported yesterday, he's a bit about turn. The ODM leader is basically saying, you know what, CRA presented a formula, and then the Senate Committee on Finance changed this formula. We have seen very many proposals for amendments to that formula again. So can we just go back to the CRA formula? Something they should have done a year ago, going back into this. I also saw bits of that interview that Raila did with NTV yesterday, and I think I saw a part where he was saying he was away in Dubai. He did not know that Senate had changed the formula. So he's coming back and he's hearing, wait, this is not the CRA formula.
in a state of confusion.
Yeah. So basically, I think the issue of what formula was presented by the CRA in the first place and what changes then have been proposed to that formula.
You know, the question that comes to my mind, Eric, is this really a problem that is beyond solving?
Of course not.
Oh.
There we go.
It is not beyond solving. In fact, this is a conversation that senators buried their heads in the sand for over a year. They
Yes,
should
they
have
did.
dealt with this. What they did is that they were kicking the can down the road. Now the can cannot move any. This
It's
is
the end
the
of the
end
road.
of the road.
Yeah.
And they have nowhere else to go but to sit, lock themselves up in a room, come out as 9 members of a committee and announce a way forward. Wako na kibarua. Kigumu sana. Members of an elite police unit have been arrested because of something very simple. Armed robbery.
They were the armed robbers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is alleged that they were the armed robbers.
So there is, remember, Flying Squad and the Special Crimes Prevention Unit
Yes.
of the CID. Those were disbanded last year by George Kinoti, the DCI. And he formed a new team called the, what's it called? Special Service Unit. So the members of this special service unit are alleged to have done something. 3 officers abducted a security officer at a gas depot in Machakos town on Saturday. They used their vehicle to block the security boss, after which they forced themselves into his car while armed with an AK-47 rifle and a pistol. After accessing the company, they ordered the workers to lie down and they took their cell phones. The policemen are then said to have ordered the security manager to hand over money, failure to which they would arrest the workers. They received 600,000 shillings allegedly through mobile money transfer services, and then they reported to have forced the security boss to an ATM in Matu town, where they forced him to withdraw a further 100,000 shillings. Out of the money, 370,000 shillings was transferred to an M-Pesa till number, an agent number, and 2 Safaricom lines in various locations, all which were traced back to the suspects. The 3 were disarmed and placed in police custody yesterday.
Okay.
Police officers of a special elite unit are alleged to have gone to this premise, used firearms, not covered their faces. They go in there and they demand money and they say, Tuma pesa kwa M-Pesa. Their mobile phones are on. Tuma pesa kwa M-Pesa. They go with this guy to an ATM, withdraw money. Then they go and transfer this 300, half of that money to M-Pesa till number, an agent number, and 2 other Safaricom lines, right? And these are members of an elite unit who know how investigations of such are conducted.
Yeah.
And then that it's all traced. Okay, this mobile number, you guys were here, you're in the same location as the mobile number that was receiving this money, you're in the same location as the mobile number that was transferring the money. And you tell me these are elite.
They are elite. They are elite. You see, what it points
Should
to...
have known a little better, no?
No, it's not that. They do know. They do know. But it's the depths to which the impunity within our security forces and within the certain arms of government, the depths to which that has sunk. Because these are people who clearly did not think or believe that anything would happen to them.
So, it doesn't really matter because
it didn't
nobody's
matter.
going to do anything about this. It's the attitude
Start with what they
things
did.
have taken.
Just start with what they did.
Yeah. Lie down. Kila mtu lala chini.
Thuggery, basic, ABCD of thuggery.
Yeah.
Use your position and use it as brutally as you possibly can. Why? Because you figure nothing is going to happen.
Nothing will happen.
But the thing also that comes to mind, we've had occasion when I, in particular, have said some unkind things about the police force and their inability to do anything. I remember one Irungu Houghton actually corrected me and said, but if you look at some of the cases where it's the police themselves who have come to the fore and have actually done what needs to be done. This is one such case where the police have actually acted against what? Their own.
Their own.
Meaning, we do have people within our police force, and I dare say many, who will do the right thing.
And ensure that the information is leaked to the media so that you up the pressure.
Yes.
This case is out there in the public.
So we know.
So everybody now knows. Now we'll be asking, so what happened to those?
Essentially, Eric, you mentioned something interesting because what it means is sometimes if that happened and no one knew about it, it would die.
Yeah, it's possible to kill
And those gentlemen could just get on with their lives. Yep. But the moment it's in the public domain, people ask for names, and I'm sure the names will also be leaked in due course.
Yep.
So this case isn't going to disappear.
It is not dying. Keep the case alive. Kudos to the officers who did their work and the elite officers who decided to not do their work. Hope you find yourselves in the corridors of justice. CT, top of the hour. Today's proverb from DRC or Central Africa.
Well, talking about brothers, silence and noise are brothers.
Les silences
Et le
et fracas
sont les frères.
There you go.
Sounds good when said in French.
That's it in French.
Yes. Say it again.
Silence et le fracas sont les frères.
Wow, there you go. 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, so right around Donholm roundabout, a bus has decided to greet a saloon car. So what has happened now is that everything has come to a standstill. It's not moving, and this is going to affect traffic that's heading towards the city center. Mombasa Road at Green Park Estate, Athi River towards Simba Cement is flowing very smoothly, but it's very cold. And that means that visibility is poor. The sun is trying to peek out, though, in certain areas. Thika Road is super clear this morning. Headed into the CBD will not be too terrible. Matatu madness in some areas right around Kenyatta University, and that stage there is a problem this morning. So hopefully that will open up. No traffic on Mombasa Road. It's actually very, very good today. Can we cross our fingers and hope it stays that way? If it doesn't, do let us know. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us. It's Thursday. We want to keep things moving. Let's see how good we'll do.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
2 minutes
Room,
after 7 o'clock.
the
Thank you very
only way
much
to
for tuning in
start
to
your
The
day.
Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We broadcast from Nairobi. We are in Mombasa. We are in Malindi. We are in Njeri, Eldoret, Nakuru, Kisumu. And somebody told you that they were listening to us from, where was this again? The other day?
Germany?
Yeah, we're in Germany as well, yes. Where else?
Well, there's...
Yangon.
Well, yes, but I got a message from somebody who listens to us from Mombasa every morning.
Right?
This person leaves his house every day at 6 to go to work. Well, he actually happens to have a name like mine. He's also called Charles.
Okay.
And he listens every morning.
Hence.
Parks at his place of work, sits for another half an hour as he listens. And he says, it makes very interesting listening. And I said, thank you.
Well,
Charles,
thank
for
you very
listening.
much, Charles.
Charles to Charles.
Yep. Then there was another professor who called you from, where was this?
Belgium?
No, in the country. Where was this? Somewhere in, was it Bomet or Sotik?
Yeah, it was. Yes. I'm trying to remember. Yes, there was. There was.
Yeah. So 96.0 frequency, you can actually catch us from Nakuru all the way,
It was
go
Bomet.
into Bomet, into Narok. You'll get us.
It's actually clear. What is also strange, I have people who tell me that they hear me a lot clearer when they're in the Nyanza area than when they're actually in Nairobi. Yes.
Could be some vibes that you're passing directly through.
So when someone is in Nyanza, they hear CT much clearer.
Clearer.
I was being told this last week. She said, I hear your program. It's not me. I hear your program is clear, and every morning I listen to it. She said, then I come to Nairobi and I have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neck of the woods. There's something he does, you know.
Yes. There's clarity.
Yes, clearly.
But is there no clarity in Nyandarua? There is.
There is clarity in Nyandarua as well.
And
We
you
have
hear
John
it
who calls
clearly.
every
Yes.
morning. Yep. Everywhere in all parts of this country. In fact, even our friend Yegel, whenever he's in
Where
Wajir,
did he go to?
he calls in from Wajir. Yegel, we hope that you're keeping well. Please call us in and let's know how you're keeping.
We know
Whether
very
now
well.
he's in Matu
Yes.
or in Wajir or...
We know it's clear in Kilifi. We know it's clear in Kwale.
Yep.
We know it's very clear in Mombasa. We do.
Having some technical issues, though, in Malindi this morning, 97.7. Our engineers are up there. They are sweating in the Malindi heat this morning. And what they're doing is they're trying to sort this issue out. However, you can still catch us on our live stream, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, Spice FM KE, or our website, www.spicefm.co.ke.
Okay. Continuing and looking at what's going on in the country, NHIF loses voluntary members due to the virus COVID-19. Contributions have dropped sharply after members lost jobs due to the pandemic, according to the agency's CEO. Peter Camunyo yesterday said contributions have sharply dropped over the last 4 months, noting the agency has lost 4 out of 5 voluntary contributors. 4 out of every 5 voluntary contributors have been lost. He said the pandemic that broke out in China late last year has pushed many out of their employment. Thus, they are not able to contribute. This is not only the informal sector, but in the formal sector where there are job losses which affected contributions. So he was speaking in Kisumu, and he said that they're a bit worried about this essentially, but hoping that this comes out so that more and more people will be able to contribute and they get NHIF back on it. Look, NHIF already had issues, but out of the 9.5 million contributors, only 5 million, mainly in the formal sector, are still active.
Can you imagine? That's a very sharp drop. Huh?
4.5 million, yeah, for sure.
That's
But
close
also-
to 50%.
Yeah, and you can see, I mean, people have lost their jobs. The remittances were being done by their employer for NHIF, and now that has basically stopped, and somebody is left here and they're thinking, all right, so I can become a voluntary contributor, the one that you pay 500 bob, but I don't even have that.
You can become a voluntary contributor, but remember what happened with NHIF a couple of months ago is that even as you begin, your account essentially is not active for another 90 days. And this is not just for default individuals. This is anybody now who joined. So even then, even if you were to start, you wouldn't be able to access services for 3 months.
Well, there were some halts on some of those moves that were being proposed at the beginning of the year. In fact, remember the presidential directive that, hey, guys,
Stop it.
stop it first, think it through again, the better way to do it. So, and we know that right now NHIF is the only one that is able to cover for you, at least in public hospitals, when you have COVID. All other insurance will not touch you, and unless now when those other proper specific arrangements. So it's basically just talking about the burden of COVID-19
Yeah.
for the 20% who are symptomatic and who the other percentage that requires hospitalization.
I remember the other day
Costs.
we were discussing this matter of Parliament giving a nod to a certain pension scheme for people who have been members of Parliament.
Yep.
Well, it has hit a little bump. Treasury doesn't agree with them. Basically, they set a bad precedent.
The issue was up for debate. Was it also yesterday, right? So what has the Treasury told them? What is this scheme and what exactly are they looking for? Are they looking to contribute to a certain scheme and then making the employer, the Parliamentary Service Commission, pay something else?
I believe this is what you're saying is what was supposed to form part of the discussion, because it arose and people said, when you have a scheme, it means somebody has been paying into it so that they can then receive from it.
Yeah.
But you now want to pay people who were never part of any scheme and didn't contribute to it.
Yep.
So where are we getting the money to give them?
Yeah. Well, how is this a pension?
Yes. How is it? You contribute to a pension for it to be a pension.
Because even for NSSF, you contribute to
Oh,
it.
yes, you do.
If you've got any formal employment or any scheme that you've joined,
You
a
contribute
retirement
to it.
benefits
You
scheme,
contribute
you
to it.
contribute to it.
Yes.
You can't just say that, because I worked for you, therefore you.
No.
What do you mean?
No.
No way.
There's the bit you contribute and there's the bit that the employer contributes. It's understood, but you have to contribute.
Yeah.
So let's say that the discussion is still ongoing, shall we?
Why are we having that discussion?
Well, money has to come from the treasury at some point.
No. Why are we having a discussion at all?
I think with 2022 looming not in the not too distant horizon, MPs are beginning to figure out what happens when I'm no longer Mheshimiwa. And the people of my neck of the woods no longer feel I should be their Mheshimiwa. Shouldn't I wisely take my position as it currently is to ensure that I have a little nest egg for that very rainy day?
Which is why I'm asking, why are we having that conversation? Look, go to any of these insurance companies, right? They are running insurance schemes. Go to any of these other companies, Kina Alexander Forbes. Go and enroll yourself into a scheme, pay, contribute. This conversation, having come to Parliament as a bill for no. We have civil servants and they contribute to pension and the government contributes to pension. You are working in public service. either you join that or you form your own.
That is very true.
A conversation here that tells us that we, the taxpayer, are going to be contributing X amount simply
Again.
because you're a mweshimiwa into a scheme that, no, I refuse to.
I
Get my mind.
actually agree with your refusal, and if I'm allowed to second it, I second it. But we have good company here because Treasury also agrees with us. And they've said, look, we have a commission called the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. They have to wade into this thing. And we need actuarists to actually come and conduct evaluation and to said there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
It just can't be that you have agreed and then, the money is forked out. No. And then they've also mentioned the same thing we are saying. They're saying, look, folks, pension by its very nature is a contributory process.
Yeah.
So, can we get this thing right?
But you know what my fear is? The conversation that's being raised, the pushback that's being raised by the National Treasury is basically a negotiation. At some point, the National Treasury will need something from these parliamentarians and it will cede some ground. And by ceding ground, we are basically saying that as long as you've been elected into parliament, you serve 1 year, you contribute 100,000 shillings, you shall receive 100,000 shillings for the rest of your life.
rest of your life.
But there's a twist to it as well.
It
And
can't,
this
it can't
is
just be walking the
one
park
of the
like
things
that.
that Treasury also pointed out. He said, remember, we currently have a scheme where members of parliament who've been in parliament for 2 terms are entitled to a certain pension.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Says there'll be a problem. Because at some point, people will want a certain element of balance and say, why are some are receiving more? He said, that's why they said it opens up a can of worms, a complete can of worms.
Already we made a mistake by allowing that, saying that because you've served for 2 terms, then you get pension. What do you mean? You work for 10 years, you
Eric,
get
did
pension.
we allow it? I don't remember my opinion.
Was it being allowed or was it just
See, they
being
discussed
set?
it among themselves and passed it in under 2
So
minutes.
we
or
shall do
something.
this.
Yeah.
It's passed. It's
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
Your opinion was not asked.
Yes, and we sat back. We've never challenged that thing in court or any of those things.
no,
That's
it
why that's why I'm saying we allowed it to happen.
We allowed it.
Yeah.
You're right. We allowed it. You are absolutely
Mimi
right.
historia waheshimiwa mimi.
Don't like it.
No.
So there's a small problem of how there's a crisis because health workers might go on strike. One would imagine with the grim reality of a fast approaching COVID-19 peak, hospitals and health workers could be in overdrive mode preparing for the battle ahead. But health staff are instead downing their tools and abandoning their workstations, threatening to shut down the entire healthcare system over, guess what? Unpaid salaries and other welfare concerns. In Nairobi, the hotbed of the pandemic, the crisis is already unfolding with some 5 medical centers closed after workers contracted the virus. 720, that's the number of health workers who have so far contracted COVID-19, according to their union. Not been paid salaries, welfare is not being taken care of. We spoke to the chairman of the KMPDU a couple of weeks ago, and Secretary General rather, and he said, this is the situation. People are not being taken care of in terms of protective equipment. Salaries are not being paid.
The promised
in some
allowances.
areas. Promised allowances have not come. Insurance is still not been taken care of. Medical insurance has not been taken care of, as was the promise from the national government. This has not happened yet. So we're looking at a situation whereby, in order to get some of these things done, the hard stance of downing tools might actually become a reality very soon.
Tools have been down. The counties of Omabay, Kisumu, Siaya, and Mandera, health workers down to their tools. It's not that they are thinking and threatening.
It's done.
Right now, the individual who heads the Nurses and Clinical Officers Union has said that, something, they're not going to allow the members to be suffering and dying as a result of someone else's negligence and fault.
Nope.
So they've issued notice.
Yep.
August 10th, in 4 days' time,
Pay us.
or we down our tools. Seth Panyako, the Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Nurses, says if the government likes the idea of Kenyans dying because they do not go to public facilities, then so be it. If the government likes that idea, so be it.
It's okay.
Now, the Ministry of Health has already said, you know what, this one, Pontius Pilate, bring me water, wash my hands. This is counties. Yesterday, CS Mutahi Kagwe said, the issue of health services delivery is a devolved function. So this whole back and forth, please direct you to the counties.
It's not national
Yeah,
government.
it's not us. That is for counties. This is not an issue that we want to respond to. This is an issue that the counties should deal with, and therefore.
By the way, the CS for health is right. You know this backpassing that our people are accustomed to. Okay, it truly is a devolved function. Yes,
And especially the workers' issues are now.
yes.
It's
Now,
the counties that are not paying their workers.
yes, and if you want to go the route of blame, then apportion it where it ought to
It
be
ought to
apportioned.
be.
Apportioned, yes, because when counties get more money, should counties get more money? If counties get more money, it will be because other functions have been devolved, because that function is accompanied by the money that is supposed to be for it.
Yeah.
Now, if this issue of health, man, it's a tiresome issue. You never have a break from it. You have to ask, what on earth? Remember, we had this same issue with Kirinyaga.
Yep.
And it was at the center of some of the issues that the MCAs
MCAs.
brought against their governor. And if you were to listen and look at some of the evidence that was being provided, it was clear there was a problem.
There's something.
Clear there was a problem.
Yep.
And why is it being replicated in so many other counties? You have the money, pay.
Pay.
Where's the
I don't
problem?
understand. You
They
pay.
complain that they don't have the money. Remember, counties have been complaining that, the National Treasury has not released money, so we are not even able to pay our workers. However, this is just one cadre of workers that's complaining. It appears that maybe the others have been paid. And also, not all counties.
No.
For example, these counties of, remember, whenever we speak to Dr. Alfred Mutua, he says the first thing that I make sure I do
Pay
is
salaries.
I pay salaries and I pay especially the healthcare workers.
He does.
At this point in time, healthcare workers get everything that you need. So, same thing we've seen with Makueni County.
They may use a disproportionate amount of their money to take care of health matters. But they've said, look, health matters are important.
Yep. This one we sort out. Then everything else, let's discuss later. 17 minutes after 7 o'clock, let's take a look at the weather, and then we continue the big conversations of the day.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
It's warming up ever so slightly in Nairobi. You're currently at 12 degrees and partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the day, and we'll see a high of 24 today. It's 13 degrees and partly cloudy in Njeri. Chances of rain quite high with highs of 23 and lows of 13. The sun is shining in Nakuru at 12. It will not shine for long though, because we'll see some showers later. Highs of 23 and lows of 11. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 12. Highs of 19 with thunderstorms expected for later. And in Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 27. In Kakamega today, there's a chance of rain in the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 15. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 23 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 22 with showers expected later. In Malindi, 23 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, and opens up to some rain later with highs of 28 and lows of 21. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 27 with showers expected later and lows of 17. In Dar es Salaam, 23 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions, highs of 31 and lows of 21. And we'll take a look into Joburg, where with clear skies this morning, a bit chillier at 6, coming to highs of 20 and lows of 4. And finally, for now, in Lagos, it's 23 degrees and partly cloudy, highs of 28 and lows of 22 with showers throughout the day.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
So
FM,
counties, are the
Nairobi.
ones that are dealing with this issue of COVID-19. Of course, when it comes to workers, when it comes to setting up isolation facilities, when it comes to equipping their hospitals with their ICU facilities as well, fighting COVID-19, money has been set aside by the government. Money has come from other development partners. Some of the money going straight from development partner to county government, others coming from the national treasury to county governments. And the nation has been serializing a series, this story on how counties are basically spending this money. And, this is where we start saying, okay, companies that were handpicked. Register a company today, tomorrow get the
You're good.
tender, and the next day get down payment. And within 6 weeks, you have delivered zero. And the questions start emerging. So, wait, ulipewa pesa? And maybe the person starts saying, I was even getting my bank account sorted. Some counties have done something. Other counties are not doing anything. I mean, this is where now the issue of transparency comes in. So as we look at other counties, as we get to look at other counties and how they've been covered, let's take a look at this one of Makueni. Makueni as an example. As most counties opted for direct procurement, which saw companies handpicked to supply COVID-19 materials, Makueni decided to go the open tender route. They said, open tender. From their own resources, Makueni County set aside 45 million shillings from their budget, which was the 2019-2020 budget. 45 million shillings. They received 119 million shillings from the national government, part of the 5 billion. They also received some extra cash from Danida. Okay, so received 58 million from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission for health workers' allowances. You see those allowances that we talked about?
Yeah.
The president declared, okay, let's come up with allowances for health workers. Look at the cadre, doctors will get 20,000 all the way to 2,000. They received the money, 58 million from SRC. 30 million shillings from the World Bank, 7.4 million shillings from the Danish Development Agency, Danida. So far, the county has used about 60 million shillings on supplies, and the companies that have won the tenders are listed. In fact, the information is public. It is a company called Makueni County Finescope Limited. It's owned by the people who are named there. Maylin Kenya Limited, registered in Kenya, owned by 4 Sri Lankan nationals. Others are Mission for Essential Drugs and Supplies, KEMSA, Crown Healthcare. They are all known. This is what we have received. This is what we are doing. And they created a Makueni COVID-19 treatment unit.
Okay. 4 counties in the Rift Valley, namely Nakuru, Nyandarua, Baringo, and Samburu, who have a combined budget of 1 billion Kenya shillings, have budgeted, well, separately, but it combines to 1 billion,
Right.
to actually ensure that they are ready to combat COVID. Let's start with Nakuru. They have a budget of 249 million. Their drugs and supplies, as indicated in the nation, has been supplied by KEMSA. The contractor is mentioned, and they are renovating Bondeni Sub-County Hospital. Bedding costs unknown. You will find that this features in each of these countries. Certain costs are not known.
Yeah. When
Hand washing
information is
stations,
sought by
yes,
journalists, you are taken
it's
around.
unknown, yes. Then Nyandarua.
Yeah.
Budget 240 million supplies, ICU beds supplied by Meds, renovation of ICU by Sonic contractors, ambulances and a double cabin purchased, gas supplied by BOC at an unknown cost. Now, I'm thinking of Nyandarua because we have someone who keeps calling us from Nyandarua. And his problem, the persistent problem, he says, water. We're a catchment area for water, but we do not have. So I'm raising the question, how are you going to solve this problem of COVID? Forget the bedding. What about the preventative aspects of COVID?
Yep.
If you didn't have ample running water within your county, how do you hope to resolve this? Because if you don't stem the tide of people falling sick and coming to your hospital, you can build twice the number of bed capacities and you will still have a problem on your hands. Baringo, they budgeted 200 million. And again, drugs from KEMSA, the contractor building an isolation center, costs unknown, hand washing stations, costs again unknown. Samburu budget 160 million. Renovation ICU by Al Noor Contractors. Drugs supplied by KEMSA. ICU beds bought at 63 million. Training and health workers by Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital at a cost of 2 million. Now, if these are the costs that are being put aside in their budget for this, you then can argue that perhaps they're ready. But unfortunately, that isn't actually the case, because many of these are still works in progress.
So the devil is in the detail.
Yes.
Money has been set aside, procurement is happening, but is the work being done?
Is the work being done? I
Is
mean,
it
can it
completed?
translate if you were to go, and would you be able to then look around you and say, yes, in actuality, these things have been done? And it's unfortunate that you have to ask that question. But I mean, historically, you've been often been told that, yes, certain things would have been done. But in this case, you have to see, right? To then actually believe.
To believe it.
Yeah,
For this
you have
one,
to
you have
see
to
it to
see.
believe it. Oh, no, for sure.
You'll
Because
be to-
anybody can tell you anything. How many unknowns did you mention, CT? I think I was counting, and I think I stopped at 7. Because there's certain amounts that would have been spent on certain things, and then they were unknown. For information that should be in the public, it should be public.
It's not even that. You're talking about costs of items that are known.
This is it.
So the cost cannot be unknown.
They don't know
The
how-
quantities that you want. Remember, there was the initial target of 300 bed capacity, isn't it? Now, so if you want 300 beds, whatever accompanies these beds should be known. If it's the linen, if it's the hand washing stations, everything. If you're building an ICU, the requirements of an ICU that is considered to be of the required standard is known. There's nothing we're dealing with here which is unknown. So when you're told this, then again, even where questions need not arise, questions will arise.
Yeah.
course.
If you don't respond, questions will arise. For example, Garissa County, according to the Nation, refused to divulge information on its suppliers. Okay? The suppliers, wacha kutusumbua. Out of the 41 million shilling budget, they've spent 16 million shillings on PPEs and renovation of the main isolation center. So, Garissa, 41 million shillings, spent 16 million shillings. How many beds do you have? 419 beds. Machakos County had a budget of 50 million shillings from its own budget. Then they got the 188 million shillings, part of the 5 billion from the national government. How much have they spent so far? 100 million shillings. How many isolation beds do they have so far? 475. We also know that in Machakos, there is a field hospital at the stadium that was set up a long time ago. It's there. What did they do? They went again, renovated the toilet facilities and all. So, 100 million shillings spent to do all those things. The suppliers, contractors who have been sourced to do all this work are similar to those ones being used in Makueni County. Same companies. KEMSA, Meds and Crown Health Care Solutions, another company called Biomed, which according to the story isn't listed with the Register of Companies. But Kajiado County says it's using its Isinya Vocational Center to make hospital beds.
And what's their capacity? Do we know?
The Kajiado County?
The
The capacity of the
making-
Isinya
to make these
Vocational
beds, yeah.
Center to make the beds. No, we don't know yet. But also they are saying that this is the same institution that we're using to make PPEs and hand sanitizers. So
Again, we're not all about the capacity.
gone to local and said, well, we're using these ones to get for us. Other suppliers that cannot be made at this facility are the ones that are being procured. So Kajiado, budget of 25 million shillings, received 52 million shilling grant from the national government. Cash used, not disclosed.
Okay, you see, now that's the problem. Because you have this whole litany of wonderful things that you did, right? And then you're going to end it on a sour note.
Zinafanywa hapa kwa
Right, then-
shule.
yeah.
Fitanda,
But then at the
fitanda
end, we
natoka
don't
kwa
know.
shule.
By
It's
the way,
unknown.
it's the same story in
But the truth is
Samburu.
that they do know.
They actually tell you the amount they spent on ICU beds. They said they spent 63 million shillings. But there's a little problem here. They cannot tell you who the suppliers were.
Cannot or will not.
Cannot, will not. And they also do not tell you where they were purchased from. Meaning, essentially, an amount is thrown at you and that's it.
That's it.
See, if you're told the supplier, then you can verify, isn't it? So the verification process has been obfuscated completely. You can't verify. You're just being, again, information just being thrown at you.
It's choice for transparency, and this is where now governments feel like, you know what, I'll choose to disclose or not to disclose. But this is where the problem comes.
Is it not
It's not a
supposed to be public
request.
information?
This is, you're doing something, just say, this is what we're doing and this is who's doing the job. And this is how much you're spending. This is how much you've earmarked to spend in this particular project.
Yeah,
By the
because the
way-
minute you don't, you're making people think that
You're
then
bringing in
there's something to
other
doubt.
issues.
Nakuru County had something very interesting.
Bring us that interesting story after this break.
Yes,
Let's
we
look
will.
at traffic, because this one is all roads should be leading towards this specific counties. Anyway, let's talk about what's happening on the roads, and then we come back and look at how are these counties spending the billions of shillings in the fight against COVID-19. Can they account for that, or can they not? 7:30.
Can I?
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, taking a look at how traffic may have changed. Still flowing very smoothly in most parts of the city this morning. Mombasa Road, not much traffic coming out of Cabanas and then to General Motors is where you'll find the only hold-up. But it's moving very, very well today. And the coast is clear all through to the Nyayo Stadium. So this is a hurrah moment. Ngong Road traffic is also flowing very, very well. It's very misty on Mombasa Road at Daystar University. It's foggy. So you're being asked to drive carefully and take it very slowly this morning. We know that Mombasa Road is behaving very well today. That doesn't mean that you should overspeed. Tafadhali. Okay. Looking at Westlands, that's fine. Coming off Thika Road, not too crazy. So it looks like it's a good Thursday. Let's try and keep it that way, shall we? Spice FMKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. If you have an even faster route, do let us know. Spread the word.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
It is the right of every citizen in the Republic of Kenya to demand accountability and to get information from their government, especially when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. What do we need to know? We need to know what we ought to do. We need to know what the government has put in place, how we can access the government services, and we also need to know how our money is being spent. A lot of money has been earmarked to the fight against COVID-19, and this money is going into procurement of various services and goods that are required in the fight against COVID-19. This has been the highlight of a couple of stories from the nation in the last couple of days, and today's is no exception. You were saying that Nakuru has an interesting story, City.
Yes, Nakuru has an interesting story in that they have categorically stated, the gentleman quoted Mr. Kingori, that the county has not purchased any beds. And the reason is because the previous government had purchased many beds that were simply in storage, and all they're doing is removing the beds from storage to bring into use. That's why I said
So
it's
the
unique.
already beds were there.
The beds were there, they were just not being used. They had been bought, they were sitting there, and now that they've been told they need more beds, all that they're
Okay.
doing is just removing the bed
Remove
from
the
the
beds.
storage that, yes. That's why I said it's a unique story.
So the previous government had bought beds, but just like Tana River, we don't know where to take them.
I think these...
We don't have infrastructure.
no.
We don't have a building. Yeah,
Our government had decided we want to buy beds for hospitals. And then they buy beds and they're like, sasa hii tutapeleka wapi? Just keep them in the store first as we build a hospital.
But we do know that in Nakuru there was an unknown amount that was spent for bedding, right?
It's not even that.
So this is for linen.
Yes.
Okay.
Unknown cost. The cost is unknown.
Yes.
All right. So the bedding and the linen now to
go with those
to
beds
go with the beds that
that
have
had
been in
been done by
storage.
Nduh
Oh,
Okoh
okay. So that
government.
kind of makes sense.
But it's not only that, Ndu. You see, the thing is, Nakuru have been constructing a level 6 hospital. Okay, and it's still under construction. So this was in anticipation of the 1,000 bed capacity that that they had earmarked and they were focused on. So they had planned.
Okay, wait. But they still hadn't finished construction.
No, even as we speak, they haven't finished construction. But COVID then came, but beds had been bought.
I have plans to buy a car, so I'm starting by buying
Tires and fuel. I'll
Put them in
jerry
storage. Yeah.
Jerry can.
My car is
fuel.
coming.
Yeah.
It's in the high seas.
And there's paperwork to show that the car is actually
Has
in
already
the
left
high seas.
Japan.
Yes. In fact, it's somewhere in the middle.
It already left Japan.
It's in
In fact, what you've actually even bought is not even the tires, it's the spark plugs.
and you've actually even put a shed for that particular car in anticipation
In
of the car.
anticipation.
It's called forward planning.
This is the kind of thinking that we have in our government. It's the same government that went and, remember the way they went to Thika Road and painted an entire lane from Githurai to the city center and said, this is for BRT buses only.
Was that what they
And
painted
it's a pink,
red?
It's a pink. Is it pink? Is it purple?
No,
What
it
color
got,
is that?
it got rained on, but
And
it
then
looks
it
red.
became red now. That time, we are going to announce a tender for provision of buses
Till tomorrow.
in 6 months' time. But you've already done the.
You've done the line.
You've done the lane.
It's called forward planning, Eric.
This is it, huh?
It's forward planning.
So it was
Meanwhile-
the same thing.
Yes.
We spoke to John in Nyandara a couple of days ago, and he was quite bitter over this water issue.
Yep.
240 million shillings is the amount of money that Nyandara County has set aside to combat COVID-19. It seems to be the best prepared in the region. Now, if we're going to go along with what John has
What's the
told,
region?
Rift Valley.
it's Rift Valley
Okay.
area, right? If we're going to go with what John was saying and that there's no piped water, one of the basic elements that you have to deal with in the fight against COVID-19 is running water. So I am left to wonder if they are really this prepared, and if what we're hearing is totally different, if then they are really, the money that they have said that they were going to spend, everything has been ticked in terms of we know how much it is and how much was going to be spent and what has been applied to it.
Nyandarua has running water. We're not talking about tap water. Nyandarua rains daily. That is running water. Just stand there and
It's running from the sky.
extend your hands.
Well done. Okay.
I think
There
the
are very
reference
many-
was to piped.
There are
be
rivers.
very- please
There
be
are
very
rivers in Nyandarua. That's running water.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
So, obtaining information, look, across board, all these things that we've talked about for the last 15 minutes, obtaining information seems to be a tooth-pulling exercise.
Oh, yes.
Because this information is not readily available, and neither are the holders of this information accepting to give it. In Baringo, the health executive and her chief officer refused to give details of contractors and suppliers. In Nyandarua, health executive Dr. Mungai readily gave the information they required and even took people round the centers. And it also happened in Samburu. Now, this is what I was saying. If you find that individuals are being a bit cagey about this information, then immediately your radar is going to flip up and say, then there must be something wrong here. Money that was supposed to have been spent either was spent in a wrong manner or was not spent at all. If you say that we've bought 1,000 beds, I would expect that if we went round and wanted to see the beds, we could see
You'd
the
see
beds.
the beds.
But if you see empty space, then the next question that comes into your head is, okay, so was the 16 million or however many million actually then spent on said beds? Why do we continually
Should
have
we
these
discuss the
questions
relationship
being asked?
between maybe journalists and the governments and the manner in which the questions are asked? Because sometimes someone can ask you a question and you can see clearly that this person is asking,
This guy's competent.
yeah, he's combative.
Okay,
He's,
but if I ask- if I
he's here
came
to
and
find
ask-
fault.
if I came and
Eric,
asked-
wewe uoga kweli? I mean,
You could have asked, is there tapped water available in the place you live in? This is a nice question. So the issue of having a regular bath can now follow. But if you just ask, I mean, that
Do you
person
really
that
shower?
Essentially, you've been told you smell.
You think I'm going to answer that question? So there's, and I'm saying this because as we were talking about this, I remembered an audio clip that had been recorded, and this was the governor of Wasingishu responding to a query from journalists. Remember that?
Oh yes, I remember that one.
And it was about the same COVID-19 and beds capacity.
And beds.
And you know the way the governor was like, "Come on, look. This, if you want me to take you, I'll take you." But the way you're asking the question, you're asking as if you're saying that we have done nothing, and so I should prove to you that I've done. Okay, wait. Are you? He
What
felt,
exactly are you?
He felt that
yes.
the journalist was already imputing improper motive from the framing of the question.
So are you saying that, just, not just the journalists, but even public across board is already has a tainted view of what they expect? So you kind of expect that, number one, either money is being mismanaged or
Would you call it tainted or would you call it realistic?
Okay, so so now that's the thing. Somebody who's sitting in the position of answering the question is going to then say, these folks are already coming at me with their own reality.
Yeah.
Without even giving me an
an
opportunity to say otherwise. So you've already come with a certain opinion in mind. And it could be that it's the absolute opposite. But if you come at me in that manner, then I'm likely not to give you the information that you're looking for.
Anyway.
And then the narrative becomes that
Tuone
we're being
mahali
caged.
utanipeleka. That's the
Exactly.
mindset.
So now I'm not telling you.
Let's see what
In
you
fact,
do.
it's unknown.
Kwenda.
I'm not telling you. So it just becomes a rat race, because then you start saying, okay, these individuals don't want to share this information. And at the end of the day, the story is that
However-
COVID money was stolen.
However, though, the leadership has a responsibility, and you should take your responsibility seriously.
I
So
agree,
it's
that
okay.
regardless
Whatever
of the
you're
attitude
asking,
that comes
however
at
you're
you.
asking this question, you're asking a question about something that should be in the public domain. Here's the information. Now you go and break down the information.
It shouldn't involve emotions.
What do you want to know? You want to know how much we have set aside from our budget? This is how much we set aside from budget. Records are there. We took it to the county assembly. County assembly approved. You want to know how much we received from the national government as a grant? This is how much we received. How many beds have we set aside? What's our bed capacity? This is our bed capacity. Where are these beds? In this, and such another place. Go and find out for yourself. Go and do the verification by yourself. Or if you'd like me to accompany you and show you, I'm ready and willing. But it does not give an excuse to any county government or any government at all, even at the national level, to say that I'm not giving information because of how you asked it.
The question.
The question.
It's not an issue.
Kiambu County officials refused to respond to queries on how they are spending money meant for COVID-19.
Refused. Do you see?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And all you're going to see in that statement is refusal.
Refused.
That's it. So then, if it's a refusal, again, you leave a vacuum, and that vacuum then creates room for so much speculation, because people are going to ask, okay, you refused. If it's because of the way I asked the question, it's not reason enough for you not to share that information. So what comes out of that is that, number one, there's something to hide. Number two, you didn't use it as you were supposed to use it. And so then there is a problem. The outcome, you probably have to look at this with the lenses on at the outcome. You refused, guess what? It's in the media tomorrow that is what happened. You refused.
Yeah.
So you're hiding something.
Yeah.
Money was stolen, so forget it.
Politically, this is not good for you.
No, it really is not. The narrative out there amongst Kenyans is that a lot of COVID money has been misappropriated. There is absolutely nothing you're going to do short of showing people PPEs, showing people beds, showing people ambulances that will make them believe that it has not happened.
Yep.
Aside from showing them that stuff or coming out and being pop and plain, as transparent as possible, people are going to continue with that narrative. Money was sent, it was stolen, it has been misappropriated. And until and unless you make that different and show them clearly that this is what has happened, that narrative is something that they're going to continue to peddle until this time
what I
ends.
see as interesting is that there seems to be a competition within county and national government circles to see who can actually pilfer the most.
Yeah.
You only 240 million. I see your 240, I
Gravity.
raise you 500.
Because how do you explain a situation where we have this same discussion? All we are doing is, of course, pointing out to new areas where there's lack of clarity, and it all involves finances. There's this column, Corridors of Power, in the Star. a state corporation that is part of the medical fraternity has become the epitome of corruption. A cartel led by senior officials is reportedly collecting at least 5 million weekly from clients seeking approvals from the entity. The cartel boss, who hails from Nyanza, operates with impunity and has been making some approvals without due certification processes. Members of the public who have fallen prey to this cartel are appealing to the health CS Mutahi Kagwe to disband the agency's board and invite the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (NDCI) to conduct a lifestyle audit of the agency's top directors.
Yep. And this story has been proudly sponsored by the opposition cartel.
Well, this one, when you say corridors of power, it's actually under political gossip. Who is doing what and where in the world of politics?
Yeah. How that information ends up in such places is because it's been highlighted by somebody who's feeling rather miffed. And it's not because not always because that they really care for public good, but it's because they want to get these guys out, and so you come in. But the point is that there's something happening in this organization,
Something
whether
is
by this cartel or by
Another cartel.
There's something happening. 14 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Join the conversation.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Spice and everything nice. Alright. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
something happening
FM.
in one of the state corporations in the the health docket.
Clearly, this particular...
You want certification, you part with 5 million shillings.
Yes.
Every week they're receiving to the tune of 5M.
Yes, and this certification, I believe, has to do with your capacity to actually procure on behalf of entities that need health-related things.
Services.
Yes,
and
exactly.
goods. Hey. And that will just be swept under the carpet. You'll see a few movements here and there of top leadership, but the rot will not be touched at all.
Something that I've wondered about, we keep reading of doctors coming from Cuba. Is this part of the, should we say, an aid agreement that we have with Cuba, and are they helping us? Or do we actually pay for these doctors? I don't know.
Remember, this is after the president's visit to Cuba a couple of years back, and where they went and looked at Cuba and its robust health services. And this is at a point when the president was pushing for the commencement of the UHC. And they said, let's get the experience of these doctors to come and help us. Now, who pays these doctors is, like you're saying, it's
Your guess is as good as mine.
yeah, I think the information is out there in the public domain. It's just that we haven't come across it yet. But also, Kenyan doctors went to train in Cuba.
They did.
And they were being facilitated by the government. Students who went to Cuba, they were being facilitated by the government, and they did get there and go to certain colleges where they was to study and then to come back. I remember stories coming out in the media about some of those doctors who were there talking about frustration. They haven't received enough money for their upkeep from the national government. They're not getting proper support from their hosts. And some of them were even talking about having mental breakdowns because of what they were going through. And they were saying the conditions here, really, we're not getting information from our government back at home. We are not getting support here. So we are left wondering what we're supposed to do. A couple of stories emerged. A couple of stories as well about the Cuban doctors in the country. Them having to operate, requiring the assistance of translators throughout.
Well, maybe this is something we need to look into in greater detail. Yes.
Meanwhile, shortage of test kits is forcing the revision of discharge rules.
Yes.
This is because the latest protocols by the Ministry of Health now dictate that as long as a patient does not exhibit fever 3 days after all the other symptoms have cleared, then they can be discharged without necessarily taking another test. Are you okay? Unasikiaje? Touch your head, touch your head, touch your head. 3
No,
days.
Are you sweating on the
Are you
nose?
sweating?
No.
Then you're
Okay, go home. These changes follow projections detailed in a Ministry of Health document that shows that up to 42 million Kenyans could get infected by January 2021, representing 88% of our population. However, using the current estimates of transmission in Kenya, the document titled Targeted Testing Strategy for Coronavirus Disease 2019 in Kenya projects that 68%, that's 32.6 million Kenyans, will be infected by November 2021. So if this 68% of the Kenyan population ends up infected, and assuming that 10 to 15% of those will be symptomatic and will therefore need medical attention and testing, then in a population of 48 million people, at least 3.26 million to 4.89 million people will need at least 2 tests each by November next year. We are talking about, let's just work with a lower figure, 3.26 million people requiring at least 2 tests each. That is how many? 6.5 million tests conducted. So far, the whole country has only done 329,000 tests.
We moved from 250,
Yeah, at least we've made some movement.
but we're not even at 500,000.
We are not at 330,000 yet. All right. So if we were to look at this and say, all right, we will need to conduct at least 6.4 million tests in a year's time.
If the
How
current
realistic is
indicators
that?
actually then are what are being used to make this
Yep.
calculation, then yes, you're going to need that in a year's time. If
Can
in
you
4 months
imagine?
you've done 329,000, right? 4 months, 329,000. So maybe in another 8 months, another
So 300,000 a quarter. So times
about
4
1.2
quarters.
million in a year.
It shouldn't be difficult.
And it requires
And you
6.4.
need,
No, it shouldn't
It's
be
gonna
difficult.
take some time, no?
it shouldn't be difficult. That money that seems to be planned for giving to MPs, if
The
it was,
pension money.
yes, if it was directed in this fight against COVID, then perhaps we might begin to make a dent.
Okay, no.
This is our country. So now, because of also this shortage of test kits, remember, the other day we were talking about how long it's taking for you to receive your results. Go conduct a test at least 8 days to 10 days to 15 days before you get your results. Now they're wondering, okay, so you tested positive, you have been put in isolation, you have gone through the viral load shedding, and then you need to go through another test. Before we allow you to go home, we have to confirm that you have tested negative. Even before the WHO revision, the CDC revision, that was talking about you don't need to do 2 tests, just 1. You're talking about holding somebody for 26 days at least.
Remember, this sounds terrible even as you're saying it, but let's make it a little worse by giving a little dose of reality. People have died.
Yeah.
You do not know what to do with this patient because you don't know the status of this patient. So you don't know what appropriate care should be given to this person. So the person ends up dying. And this is an issue. The numbers keep increasing.
They're increasing.
Yes.
If somebody just collapses, if, for example, right now, somebody got knocked over by a vehicle in traffic this morning, they're picked up by an ambulance, the ambulance people will be like, we don't know the status of this person, or we can just go handling this person. Take them to any facility before the emergency personnel actually attend to this person.
They want COVID
They want
certification.
COVID certification. And this is an emergency case.
And there is no
Hit by a
emergency facility.
hit by a vehicle, anything. You just were walking, then you, for some reason, you fainted. You fainted, not collapsed, fainted. People will not come close to you. Medical personnel will not come close to you. COVID. And it takes this long to get a COVID result.
Do you know why the care and treatment seem to work so well? It's because the services were supported. You were spoiled for choice as to where you can actually go to receive some health care.
Yeah.
And you'll be attended to. You knew you'd be attended to. And at the end of that, if it's medication you required, whether it is a broad-based antibiotic like Septrin to just ensure that
Things are
no
stable a little
untoward
bit.
ailment sort of like attaches itself to your system, you'd get it. Follow-up, you would get it. If this had been left and was understood to the system, Like we find COVID. Oh, goodness gracious me.
Government alone.
I fear.
Now, unfortunately, because of that, because of the support that the government was receiving from external funders and donors and supporters, the government never ever believed that it has a responsibility in healthcare. Here we are right now, and the government is wondering, so why
What's
can't you
going
guys
on?
come and sort out this COVID for us?
Because they're not being used to working.
Yep. Now we're
That's just
wondering,
it.
all right, so we can't even do tests. So now you just look at somebody. Touch your forehead, touch your forehead, touch your forehead. 3 days in a row, no sweat, nothing. Go home. Just go home. It's okay. Umepona wewe. That's it.
You know, there's.
Are you coughing?
No.
Are you feeling feverish?
No
I think
joints.
you have COVID. Yours is mild. Stay at home.
You know,
Home-based care.
I'm looking at something in the social media here. A gentleman by the name of Titus Mutai, he says, kindly talk of Kericho County for once.
Uh-huh.
Deep state and total failure in management. The numbers are rising and patients are protesting and others are escaping from the isolation ward.
Escaping.
What?
Ward
Yes.
break.
People are escaping from isolation facilities.
Yes.
And this is frustration, obviously.
Frustration. Lack of clarity usually. The very things we keep talking about here has gotten to a point people have figured, you know something?
Kericho County,
Yes.
right?
I may be better off if I at least just go home.
I want to look at the numbers in Kericho. I'm starting from the bottom because I want to believe that somewhere towards the bottom. 79 confirmed cases in Kericho so far.
Reported. Confirmed.
Confirmed 79 in Kericho so far out of the 23,000 total cases, where Nairobi has, in comparison, 14,577. But this is what the person is saying, that even this 79, we are barely able to manage. If you cannot manage 79,
What happens when they get to 200?
No, we can't think of that because then it would be mind-boggling and totally destabilizing in terms of what would happen. 79, let's just keep it there with the craziness that's going on. Because as is when governments just don't do any kind of forward-thinking action, even in this, please don't be forward-thinking because we can't deal with it right now, unfortunately. It sounds like we're passing it off as something so menial, but look, that's the case. This is the situation that you're going to be dealing with. So we talked here with Dr. Career a few months ago, many weeks ago. And it was, maybe we should get to the point where we just understand we're going to live with this thing for some time. It won't shock anybody because in terms of emergency interventions, sorry, it's not going to happen. All
Forget
indications
it.
pointing to any kind of drama, earth-shaking, moving, money coming
Let's
in.
adjust
People-
to our
No,
realities.
Adjust to the
we have
reality.
COVID in this country, and you don't know how COVID will hit you.
Neither do you
It
know
could
how
hit
many
you,
you really
you
have.
are asymptomatic. It could hit you and you have mild symptoms. It could hit you and you require medical attention.
And you're critical.
You don't know, so take care of yourself.
Just take care of yourself because somebody to take care
Bas.
of you.
It'll not happen.
Forget
And
about
even
it.
those mild symptoms that people are talking about, who was speaking to the Secretary General of KMPDU the other day, and you could even hear that he was saying, this thing, I have mild symptoms, but my goodness, they keep fluctuating.
Knocking
up
me
and down.
out.
Yeah, woke up feeling very, very tired. Tomorrow we'll be speaking to one of our guest hosts, a regular guest host, Njeri Thorne. She has been battling COVID. Yesterday she went ahead and announced again that, second tests, again, testing still positive of COVID, even after being in isolation for a couple of days, still testing positive, and how she's dealing with that as well. Good morning. It's a situation, Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll come back. We'll start with today's proverb, and then we'll have a conversation with the Restaurants, Entertainment, Pubs Owners Association, and we want to hear what is happening in this particular sector. One of the ones that were hardest hit immediately when the COVID-19 measures were implemented and were announced, and now we have still said, okay, pubs shall remain closed for another unforeseeable future. So what's the future of this industry and what next for the industry? Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so Thika Road jam, that has changed. Traffic starts all the way from Survey heading towards town. It's moving, however, so bumper to bumper situation, not quite. Accidents are on the rise, guys, especially after the easing of COVID movements restrictions. So as you observe these guidelines, please observe road rules, be safe and stay safe. It's important that even as you get on the roads, you're taking it absolutely easy. Okay, Thika Road, we looked at that already. It's messy at Milolongo this morning, unfortunately. There's a massive jam now from the Way Bridge all the way to the SGR and then even further to Cabana. So that has taken on an element of crazy. You're going to have some patience when on that part of the road. But after General Motors on Mombasa Road, it's very clear all the way to the CBD. Uhuru Highway is not too crazy this morning either. Coming off of Langata Road, Ngong Road and Westlands into the CBD doesn't look too bad. Thika Road and Mombasa Road is where you're going to have some issues today. Jogo Road getting to the CBD via the City Stadium roundabout is looking pretty good. The eastern and southern bypasses are open for use, not causing too many problems there this morning. Let us know what you see, just in case you might get stuck. Spiced of MKE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
Very good morning to you
This
at 8
is the
2.5
Situation Room,
minutes
the
past
only
8
way to start
a.m.
your day.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this Thursday morning. 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret is 96.7, Njeri 90.9 and 97.7 in Malindi. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's start the hour with today's proverb. In French, please.
Yes, thank you.
Oui, madame. Oui, oui.
Oh,
Silence,
moi?
silence and the other...
Silence
and the
and the
other
frère.
fellows.
Silence et le fracas sont le frère.
Bas. If you didn't get it, it's okay.
It's okay.
You know what I
You are
want-
not the target audience.
No, the thing, what I wondered, in the language it was first spoken in, before it was translated,
Yep.
it would be interesting to know what was actually said.
In Kilingala.
The-
Kilingala is actually not it's
No, it's
not
not
an
a
original
language.
language.
It's not a language.
It's not an original
Maboko.
language. It's a mixture of French, Swahili, and a little bit of English.
No. This is somebody who
Oh.
loves a certain genre of music.
We
It
have
is clear,
understood.
yes. And so he's speaking music to us
Bolongo
now.
Nangai.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Bolingo na ngai, je mapema, silence. Bas.
Oh,
So
you
in
have
English,
problems.
please, Sisi, translate what we've said in French and Lingala.
No. I don't understand the two languages you've just mentioned, but English I understand. Silence and noise are brothers. Hey!
Silence?
And noise,
Ah, brothers.
kelele, are brothers.
Like this. Bongo mingi, loki loki.
You know, this man was a member of a band.
This man is not well.
No,
Really?
he is a member of a band. It is clear. And I even know what part he played in that band.
You-
You know, most people know that the person who plays the drums is called drummer, isn't it? In Eric's time, they're called drummalists.
The drummist.
Wow.
Mutu ya kucheza drum. Haya. Anyway, it's the conversation continues. Now that we're talking about entertainment and we are entertaining ourselves, the entertainment industry in this country has really taken a hit since the COVID-19 measures were announced in the country. Remember, even before we got our first case confirmed on the Friday the 13th of March 2020, already some measures had already been announced in terms of how flights are going to arrive into the country, in terms of international meetings taking place, in terms of hotels and how they were operating. So already a number of the people who are operating in this sector had taken a hit. And then the measures were announced. And number one was, okay, first of all, night curfew. Then, second of all, bars closed. And the sale of alcohol in bars at night, therefore, closed. This is an industry that is serving very many people, tens of thousands of people. And actually, if you just put the entire hospitality sector, remember when we spoke to the CEO of the Hotel Keepers and Caterers Association, he told us easily 3,000 people were affected, lost their jobs. Now, pubs, entertainment, restaurants, these ones have continued to take a hit. At some point, the CS for Health, Mutahi Kagwe, said, all right, so we can start allowing restaurants to have some sit-in service instead of not just the takeaway, some sit-in service. And then they said, all right, so when people are sitting in there, you can have a drink with your meal. Okay. Then some people started selling smokies in their bars, and they said, no, these are restaurants. And then we saw some measures also now being announced again and said, all right, so what's going to happen is no sale at all of alcohol in any restaurant, or pubs are closed anyway, bars are closed. And then there's the question, the back and forth of some clarification being sought by the industry. We run a hotel. We have residents in the hotel. The resident is asking for an order of a drink to have in their room. Is
With
this
their meal,
allowed?
yes.
With their meal. In their room service. Is this allowed? The CS for Tourism, Najib Balala, responded to the industry and said, according to the protocols announced, that is allowed only if the person in the room is a resident. So you can serve that. But alcohol at the restaurant, no. Alcohol in the hotel's bar, no. All right? More clarification also being sought. So can we, and the minister is still responding and clarifying the air. However, we have seen also a group that's saying that they are employees and others who work in this sector launching an online campaign saying, you know what, many of us are really following the law. And then there are few of us who are breaking the law. And those few who are breaking the law are making the rest of us suffer. Can we sign up this petition online so it can be taken to the government and they can allow us to continue operating? This back and forth has a huge impact on very many people's livelihoods. And to speak to us this morning on this particular matter is none other than the national chairperson of the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, PERAC, and this is Alice Opey. Good morning, Alice.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you very much for speaking to us and welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Let's start just straight from the beginning. COVID-19 impact on pubs, entertainment, sports and restaurants. How big is this?
Wow. This has been one of the things that we never saw coming as an industry. And when you talk big, we are talking losses, millions of jobs lost. We are talking investors closing and going back home. And we are talking about government not able to collect revenues and manufacturers not able to, make their money.
So it cuts across, not just the people who have been employed, but everybody who supplies in this sector.
It's everybody. It's actually everybody, and it affects other sectors within the economy.
Do we know an average or an estimation of the numbers? Let's just start first of all with your membership. How many people are subscribed members of PERAC? And so we know that those ones obviously are directly affected because these are the owners of these establishments.
When I talk about subscription, I'll talk about subscription in relationship to last year vis-a-vis this year, because our subscriptions are renewed annually.
Okay.
Last year, we about 2,000 members, PERAC members. That includes the pubs and entertainments. And we're looking at, in Nairobi alone, we had 10,000 registered and licensed outlets. So if you look at Nairobi alone, and we are countrywide, so you find we have cut that by almost half this year because our renewals are within the first quarter of the year.
Yeah.
So we're looking at now 1.2 million as opposed to the 2,000. And again, countrywide, we are looking at about 25,000 restaurants. I'm not even touching on the pubs and the entertainment joints.
Yeah.
If we go by the suppliers list, we are looking at almost 60,000 countrywide of the pubs, entertainment, restaurants. Again, I would like just to clarify that the restaurants don't operate in isolation. Most restaurants, a very small percentage, operate in isolation of the bars. Our licenses are in categories, and most of the licenses have always been bar and restaurant. Bar and restaurant because you find it's more of a dining and wining kind of establishment. So this year we are down to almost 800,000 of non-subscription.
Those are
So that's a big.
quite a number. And then now those that supply into this, I can imagine when it comes to supplies, if it's restaurant, there's those that supply food, pubs, those that supply the alcoholic beverages, and entertainment. Of course, we're talking about DJs, bands, dancers, and all those. These are very many people. By your estimation, how many people are we talking about then who've been impacted, especially from the establishments that have been closed?
Okay, when I talk about employees alone, an average outlet employs between 10, and I'm keeping this to restaurants and bars, because based on the reopening of the industry, it was not including the standalone bars and entertainment joints. So if I talk about just the restaurants and bars, we're looking about 10 to 150, 200 employees per outlet. And if we average that, we talk about 75 people. So 75 people times 25,000 outlets countrywide. Those are big figures. We're talking almost 1.3 million people who have lost their jobs. That's direct contact service employees. And then we have now the DJs and the bands. An average outlet will keep, whether casual or permanently employed, there'll be the band that performs every 2 to 3 times a week. There'll be a DJ who performs almost 4 times a week. And there'll be other, form of entertainment. Let's take outlets like Carnival, for instance. We have stand-up comedies that were also generating income through entertainment. So entertainment is very wide. We talk about events that we've been hosting. Most events are hosted in most of our outlets. So those are all job loss, whether it's an event organizer, whether it's an artist, upcoming artist, whether it's an existing artist, whether it's a DJ. So it cuts across the board. So all these people have lost their jobs. So we are talking 1.3 for direct employees, and we are talking almost about, I think, for about another 800,000.
Alice, this is very unique in the sense that, just as you've said, this is, direct contact individuals who need to be in a space in order to fulfill, a certain role, servers, waitresses across the board like that. So was there something that could really be done? Because I see it as a restaurant is closed, people have lost their jobs. Because there was this whole clarion call when all of this started, is that people then had to think out of the box. You could then work from home or have meetings via Zoom kind of thing. But there's nothing creative you could do with this, because if restaurants were closed, for example, you don't have patrons, so people's jobs were gone. So there was really nothing that could be done, was there?
There was really nothing that could be done. You couldn't have said it better. And I must say that, our industry is unique to itself. It's a very interactive industry. And whilst we didn't see this coming up, nobody saw this pandemic coming up. And I must commend our government. They've tried to help us, and we're in the process. They've engaged us in what should be done. But yes, we cannot serve food from home. We cannot.
How exactly has the government helped you as an industry?
As an industry, just by just listening to us alone, that is a plus. giving us a platform to listen to our voice, because it impacts on the government. And why we say they listen, let me talk about our tourist sector. Our Honorable Najib Balala. We approached him because we fall under the Kenya Tourism Federation. So our umbrella body is Kenya Tourism Federation. So that involves the Qatar airline operators, tour operators, hotels, Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers, PERAC. So you cannot operate in isolation to our industry. So the government had to first understand what is it that we bring into the economy and how are they going to lose. So why I say they've helped us is the reopening, because we closed, then they reopened. For them to have reopened, they had to listen, because like she's asked, our industry is very unique. We can't work from home. We have to actually be serving. It's a very interactive and a social kind of setup. Yes. So
I'm trying to do a comparison, Alice, and I think it might be difficult, because if you look at a country like the United States, where the eat out culture is very strong, very vibrant. You don't have people cooking at home the way you do, for example, in a lot of countries here on the continent. So it was very easy for them then for the clarion call to be that when everything had to shut down because of COVID in the US, for example, there was a clarion call for, order in, order in. So there were outlets that remained open and people could then order in and get their normal meals at home, because this is something that they were used to doing. Do you see that it would have made a difference if the culture here of an eating out was as vibrant as it is in other countries?
One, we also have to appreciate that this is a third world country, for instance, and our culture and traditions also vary. A typical Kenyan household would want to have home service food. But we have also been acquiring, with the advent of exposure, we've acquired the habit of eating out. And if you looked at the number of restaurants that have come up in the recent past, there are many. And you cannot open such setups or outlets when there's no clientele. So that was already a boom. The culture of young adults actually eating out and families opting to entertain themselves at least 3 times on average in a week. That culture was now already coming up, and I think for us it's been a big blow, because most people don't go back home. Most Kenyans don't carry food from home, so it's very easy to just walk into a restaurant, because every restaurant is next to every office. Every office building has a restaurant. So the culture had already been spreading, and we had already reached a point where it was normal. So unlike America, of course, America has actually gotten it hard, because we are talking about 1.3, they're talking about 15 million people who have lost their jobs due to this. So according to us, it's a big blow to our industry, because it's a livelihood. I put it this way. Most of the investors in this industry, our industry, we've invested so much money to put in a decent restaurant in terms of ambience, in terms of security, in terms of parking, in terms of engagement of employees. It's very, cash intense. And if you look at the flip side, and you actually ask yourself, if you're going to shut down our business just like that, we have to deal with the dead stock. We have to deal with the landlord. We have to deal with the loss of jobs from our employees. So it's complicated. It's a bit complex. It's something we didn't see coming. Neither did we see the pandemic coming.
Yeah. We're having a conversation with Alice Okoh. She's the national chairperson of the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, PERAC. We want to know what's happening to this industry now that COVID-19 has ravaged the economies of very many countries, including Kenya. What's happening to the pubs, entertainment and restaurants industry in the country, the hospitality sector? What next? What does the future look like for this sector as well. 20 minutes after 8, we want to take a quick break, take a look at the weather, and then this conversation continues. If you've got any question or comments that you'd like to share with Alice, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you can post them. Good morning.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. The weather with Spice FM.
Nairobi, we'll see highs of 24 today with just partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon. It's partly cloudy in Njeri at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 23 with showers later on. Taking a look then into Nakuru, we will see partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the day. It's sunny right now, actually, and those clouds seem to have disappeared. The rains will come in later, though, with highs of 23 and lows of 13. In Eldoret, it's partly cloudy at 14 with thunderstorms later. We'll see highs of 19 and lows of 12. Kisumu is going to be partly cloudy for most of the day with highs of 27. Kakamega with highs of 24. We'll see a rain shower in the afternoon. Partly cloudy conditions at 17 currently. It's 24 degrees in Mombasa. It's likely to have a shower very soon with highs of 28 and lows of 22. It's mostly sunny in Malindi at 23 degrees. Sunny conditions all through today with highs of 28 and lows of 22. 19 degrees in Kampala and partly cloudy. Highs of 27 and lows of 18. A shower expected in the afternoon. It's foggy in Dar es Salaam now, suddenly 23 degrees. This fog likely to continue to be low and through the day with highs of 30 and lows of 21. 7 degrees in mostly sunny Johannesburg. Highs of 20 and lows of 4. And finally for now in Lagos, it's 24 degrees and partly cloudy. Rain expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 23.
Spice of everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
After 8
done
o'clock,
right. 94.
The conversation continues with Alice Okoh. She is the national chairperson of the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, PERAC. We are looking at the impact of COVID-19 on this particular sector. And Alice, before we went to the break, you had talked about the kind of support that you have received from the government and saying, well, we appreciate, at least from the get-go, just them listening to you is something. We also know that the president, for example, the government announced a number of stimulus programs that were targeted at this industry, well, the whole entire hospitality industry. 2 billion shillings, for example, for hotels and other related industry businesses, 2 billion. And when we talk about entertainment, we know that there's the 100 million shillings for artists. Are these enough?
About the stimulus package, well, it's unfortunate as an industry we don't know a way forward on that because there was the 3 billion that the president announced that was going to the hospitality sector. Right now it's a gray area because we are learning that the money is not going to affect our industry or it's not going to be put towards our industry. We are being pushed towards trade because this money was supposed to be given to our industry directly. And so far, well, I'll say it's a gray area. We don't know how that is coming because this was supposed to help us revamp, help us put back, help us recover. But we're hearing a different story. So I don't really want to dwell on that. A different story. This money is going to go to probably hotels.
So hotel is, I'm assuming, the one that has accommodation.
Accommodation.
You know, in us in Kenya, hotel in hotel, restaurant in hotel.
Which we would like to actually clarify.
Thank you.
A lot of people assume that if you're in the hospitality sector, it's limited to hotels. Hospitality is wide, and we have different categories. We have the restaurants and bars.
Yep.
We have the standalone bars. We have the nightclubs. We have the nightclubs stroke entertainment outlets.
Yeah.
So when you talk about hospitality, it's wide. Hotel falls in the hospitality as well. So what happened with this stimulus package, we've been trying to follow up. And so far, we haven't gotten quite clear direction on how this money is going to be.
So let's just say that you haven't accessed this money, as the members of PERAC have not accessed
We haven't
a shilling
accessed
from the
this
3
money.
billion shillings.
How would it help
And-
this money, Alice, if you were to get it? What exactly would it be able to do for members of PERAC or for these outlets?
I put it this way, a lot of people are going to close, for instance. So there's a group that already closed, and I don't think they're going to open, especially the entertainment sector. There are people who are barely surviving. There are workers who need to be paid their dues, and there are workers who need to be paid to move forward. We need to restock. We need to reinvest
Yeah.
this particular amount of money so that we get back on our feet as we deal with this pandemic. So this money was going to be very helpful in terms of restructuring, restocking, ensuring that our employees are safe
Yeah.
and catered for. So without this stimulus package, we are lost. So I would say we are in the process of communicating with the government and trying to see how this can come across to our members. But so far, I think that is a frustration we are getting on the ground. There's no clear, direction on how this money is coming. So we've been pushed to trade, and we've been told, okay, fine, trade will be able to give you a stimulus package. They'll be able to cater for you. But you see, we fall under hospitality.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. When you look at tourism is wide. And you start with local tourism. We are currently we've already opened the airspace for international tourists.
Yep.
The first thing that you want to do when you get into a country is to experience the country. You will not be confined to your hotel room. You want to go out there and see what are the restaurants offering.
Yep.
What is the culture of the place? So if you go and you get into a place and you're coming from a culture where dining and wining is the norm. And you get into a place where you'll be told, oh, here you can only dine, but you cannot wine. So that is one of the challenges we're facing. If you go, like Latiff today, if you go to a different destination, the first thing you want to do is to find out what happens here by day and what happens in this country by night. So we have the curfew, we are not able to operate. So if we close the restaurants, a restaurant is a dining experience.
Yeah.
Most
It's a
people are
gateway
working
to a
from home,
culture.
right? It's a gateway to a culture. Most people are working from home now. So for us to run a successful business, we need at least 80% capacity. We must acknowledge and appreciate that this is not the government's making, the pandemic. This is something we didn't see coming. So we've adhered with the rules and regulations. We've put protocols in place. We've reduced our seating capacity to almost 40% or less. Note that most people are now working from home. So even with the 40%, we are only experiencing less than 25% walk-ins. There are very few reservations. Most reservations are usually for dinner. So reservations, we say it's out. Then you take us back and you say, okay, fine. If we are adhering to these protocols, what are the protocols? We went for hand sanitization. We had our staff catered for, and when I talk about government engagement, the testing kit testing was about 10,000 shillings.
Yep.
We negotiated. The government brought it down to 1,000 shillings for us. The hospitality sector, especially the restaurants, for reopening, which was a very big plus.
Yeah.
And for that 1,000 shillings, okay, fine, they said, okay, they have to be tested after every 2 weeks. So the results would come after 2 weeks. We went back to the drawing board. It was lifted. They said, okay, fine, we are going to have a one-off testing. Once you've tested your stuff and you have the COVID certificate, you have the Form C to go around and reopen. We went back to the government to say, do we have to ask for new licenses?
Right.
Because we had already paid for our licenses at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Again, the government then was helpful. They said, okay, we'll endorse the license once we go through the protocols and you've adhered with the protocols. So that was taken care of. if I'm going to operate on a 40% because of the beard with the roof, and our income is about 50% or 52, between 47 to 50% on food, and we have 40% on beverages, and the rest is other incomes. So we are operating on already 40% occupancy or sitting, and I'm expected to pay my rent, to pay the staff, suppliers. And the irony is, the moment it was open, the first thing that happened was a boom. The rent owners were like, pay my rent. Unlike hotels, the disadvantage is we've not been working, but everybody's desperate. Unlike hotels, the disadvantage is most hotels own the premises. Our restaurants, we rent the premises. Suppliers rent. We realize, they've opened. I want my money.
I want my money.
Oh, the employer runs and says, listen, I want my money. You didn't pay me. It was shortcut. So we are getting pressure from every angle. The government says, okay, we are 1 minute sick. We are rushed to hospital. This is hypothetical. And I'm using metaphorically. You go, okay, we're closing. We are opening. Okay, we've opened. Oh, you're HDU. You're back to ICU. So we don't know our fate for now. Because we reopened, people went, borrowed money to reopen, to follow the protocols. And I'll tell you, it's an average of between 300,000 to actually just adhere with these protocols.
For what? For an average facility?
To reopen. To almost a million.
300,000 shillings for a restaurant.
To reopen. We closed.
Yeah.
For a period of time. When they closed, we had to close. Then we had to reopen. So for us to reopen, and this is specifically to the restaurants, because the pubs and nightclubs and entertainment outlets have not opened yet, as far as we're concerned. So we reopen, we pump in between 300,000 because there's the issue of plumbing, making sure there's water. We take our staff for testing. We do all these things. And there are people who initially just rushed for the 10,000 shillings testing because we're desperate to earn some money. So here you are, you've gone through all this. Then a month later, we have to close.
You're sent back to the drawing board. We'll talk about that when we come out of this short break. We want to take a look at what's happening on the roads and then continue this conversation with Alice Okoh. She is the national chairperson of the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, PERAC. The impact of COVID-19 on this particular sector, and then also the responsibility of this particular sector as well in curtailing the spread of COVID-19. 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. This conversation continues. Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can post your comments. In a short while, we'll also open up the phone line 0719 012 600 for you to engage with Alice Okoh. Good morning.
Broadcasting worldwide, Spice FM.
All right, we're looking at Bagathi Way this morning in Nairobi. Looks like this is where we have some traffic coming off of Langata Road and then trying to head towards Ngong Road. It's going to be held up for a while there. The Thika Road footbridge contractor has resurfaced, so that means that there's going to be some traffic on Thika Road for some time. It's good that you got out when you did, because then you don't have to deal with that. But the traffic on Thika Road today is from Survey heading towards town. It's still quite heavy at this point in time. Hopefully that will dissipate and clear out for you as soon as possible. We still see some traffic on Jogo Road heading to the city centre and then out from the City Stadium roundabout. Not as smooth as we'd like it to be, but it's all right all the same. Okay, other parts we'll let you know in a short while, but for now it's looking pretty good. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
At 26
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, the impact of COVID-19 on this particular sector. Alice, you talked about, the kind of investment that the pubs and restaurant owners, the restaurant owners specifically, had to inject just to reopen when the government eased those restrictions. A couple of weeks down the road, the government had to take a step back and order, no. There are some things that are happening here that we must reverse. But also, it was out there in the public domain, Alice. I mean, we cannot really run away from the fact that we saw very many images where people would end up in these restaurants and they're having alcoholic beverage, and the issue of physical distancing is not being observed. The waiters are not wearing personal protective equipment, even just as basic as face masks, and this was an issue. The issue of closing and observing the closing hours, this was also an issue. Do you feel that, yes, there are some of your members or some of the operators in this sector who had a big role to play in what action the government had to take?
Well, that's without a doubt, Eric, because, like I said, the reopening of the industry was for the restaurants and bars. It was not for the entertainment sector. Of course, we have a few people who'll abuse and flout the rules that the government has put in place. And that was a clip covered several weeks ago. And this has actually affected us because I think it would have been best that those particular outlets face their punitive measures. An ideal restaurant, I'll tell you, will invest between 10 million plus to put up an establishment. Our licenses run up to about 18 licenses for you to operate a restaurant and bar. So anybody in their right minds would not want to lose their license by abusing government directives. So a case like what we saw should have been individual punishments. They should have withdrawn the license, and no restaurant operates after hours. An ideal dining restaurant wants to close by 11 o'clock. Anybody operating after that is now entertainment. And the government has been very clear.
Yep.
So these are people who went ahead, flouted the protocols, did not, because they didn't care about what was put in place. So if you look at Westlands, because we focus a lot on the people who opened, we went to Westlands, Kilimani area. Most of the places had already closed. Actually, the reporter said the places are quiet, people have gone home, everything is quiet. But we focused on the 3 or 4 or 5 outlets that actually opened. Up to now, we want to know what action was taken to these particular outlets.
The ones that flouted the rules.
Sorry?
The ones that flouted the rules.
The ones that flouted the rules. What action so far has been taken by the government or the law enforcer to those particular outlets, because it was rather obvious. So why should particular outlets cause the entire industry
to suffer
their livelihood? That is the biggest question.
So why sit back then as an association? And one would assume that you also have a responsibility to those law-abiding members of your association. Why should you as PERAC then also keep quiet and keep pointing fingers at the government?
No. We are not pointing fingers at the government. As PERAC, we actually work with the government. We are not pointing fingers at the government. We engage. We come up. We were engaged in the coming up with the protocols.
Did you ever make any public statement against these particular establishments? For example, saying, as PERAC, we want to condemn in the strongest terms possible.
Yes, we did. We had a presser, just I think 2 days before that, and we totally disassociated, because PERAC is a body and it's a willing person who wants to, I want to join PERAC. And when we have a code of conduct and we have a code of ethics, which is to be followed. We made a follow-up. Who are these outlets? What do they do? Are they falling under a restaurant or a nightclub? And if they're falling under a nightclub, how come they have a license to operate when the nightclubs are not open yet?
Yeah.
Yes, because not everybody is a member of PERAC. Much as we are talking for the industry, not everybody is a member of PERAC. Like I said, we have almost 25,000 restaurants across the country. And our membership is about 2,000 as of now.
Alice, in an ideal situation, what would the government need to do to cushion you sufficiently so that you can actually survive COVID?
You see, like, for an association to thrive, we can self-regulate because we have members. What the government needs to do, we need to be very clear about this stimulus package. We need to have people who can adhere with the rules and regulations for the industry. And much as the government is trying their best with this pandemic, it is important that they engage the stakeholders. I'll just give you an example of, as far as of now, what is happening. Our industry affects so many sectors, as I mentioned earlier. So in terms of government and revenue collection, remember we have about 1.3 million employees.
Yeah.
We pay taxes to carry. We pay tourism fund. We pay NSSF, NHIF, all these corporate tax and, payee. What is happening right now is without the employees, then we've cut down on payee, NSSF, NHIF, the rate is down. Tourism fund cannot collect. Tourism fund is able to actually sponsor students studying at Utalii College. If the taxes have gone down, the corporate tax is not there. It's already a big blow on the government.
Yes, it is.
These 1.3 million employees, it doubles up or triples to, they have dependents running, being an African country, running between 4 to 6 dependents. So if you calculate that, you can see the impact we have on that end. We have suppliers, including manufacturers, and we are not limiting it to even people who today I cannot go and apply for DSTV or such kind of things. So what we are requesting the government to do is to engage us, and really as they flatten the curve, of this pandemic, we also wish that we'd flatten the curve of the economic challenges that we have.
But there's something that you mentioned, Alice, and I want to head back there, which is the issue of self-regulation and personal responsibility. I would imagine that, just like you've said, everybody who is running this business has invested quite a tidy sum of money. And therefore, it would be rather obvious that the best that they'd like to do is to operate within the stipulated rules and regulations so that you can continue operating in a profitable manner. And then we see, and we are not going to run away from the fact that we saw very many of these establishments openly flouting rules. When it comes to the rest of the rest of the investors in that neighborhood, what action can you take to ensure that there's self-regulation, there's adherence to all the set protocols, there's adherence to the membership and the code of conduct and code of ethics that you've put in place, so that you can say that as an industry, this is what we've done, this is how far we've gone to ensure that there's compliance, and then you can engage the government. Because as we stand today, I'm sure if we asked the CS for trade, and not for trade, for tourism, or the CS for health, they tell you, but look, you saw it for yourselves. These establishments were not following the rules. And there's no way we can start sending police officers to every establishment to go and police them on how they're going to operate.
We have to take responsibility. As PERAC, we're also big on social responsibility. And it's important that we own up to some of our challenges. And in a case like that, I remember you had a chat with Mike the last time, and it's all about Nyumba Kumi, the neighborhood. People should report. We have a hotline as of now that we're able to report. We are able to report this place is open, this place is causing this, and this is going to spread this pandemic even more. So for every area, you find we are in touch with the OCS in charge of that area. We have groups that we're able to communicate through. We are able to communicate with the people on the ground. We are able to communicate with the licensing officers. We're able to say these are the people that are flouting this rule. Because if I talk about restaurants, if you look at an ideal restaurant situation, it's very hard to find somebody operating after hours. If we're told to close at 8, we are closing at 8. So if I find that somebody is not following the rules, I think it's best that we just inform. It becomes our own responsibility as citizens, not only for our industry. As citizens, we have to take risk. This thing is affecting all of us. whether you are an outlet owner or you're a citizen. You have to take responsibility. So I think there's need for education.
But it sounds to me like if you had all these structures in place, what failed?
For this particular incident.
Yes. What failed? Because we are back to this situation because something failed.
We are back to this situation because something failed. It's because of the plan of reopening. We advised that if we are to reopen the economy, we do it in phases. So if it's bar and restaurants, we actually start with the bar and restaurants. And we actually open to see if they are only restricting it to bar and restaurants.
Okay.
Then we go back to the licensing office. How many people were allowed, to operate, and where they? So we have to have this list of people who are around because the country being into county zones right now, it's very easy to follow up through our licensing office. How many people are allowed to open? Did they allow the standalone bars who had previous licenses under bars? Or did they allow only the restaurants to reopen? So there are few people who will follow the rules. There are people who do things that are not in order. So I think it is our social responsibility as a country for people to report, for people to be able to say, you know what, this is wrong what you're doing. For the public to come out and say, you know what, we don't like what is going on. A point in case is right now we have given an open whatever to wines and spirits. We've closed everywhere else. But we've said, okay, the wines and spirits can operate.
Is that a good move?
Right now, a very bad move, if you ask me.
Why is that?
Because you're encouraging drinking from home. And that is one of the things that we worked very hard with NACADA to discourage. The children are already at home right now. An average Kenyan would walk into a restaurant, have a glass of wine with a meal,
And go home.
After 2 days, after 1 or 2 glasses, they go home.
Right. So do you think
I'm
that,
forced to walk into
if I can interject at that point, Alice, and so that if we just see that the protocols then that were employed for the, phasing, reopening and all of this, do you think that then captains of industry should have been involved in this decision-making process?
That has been our plea. That has been our plea because we understand our business better. We understand what is to be done. We understand what the market requires, and we understand our customers.
Okay.
So if we engage in this, of course, we also have to look at it. Oh, the government is trying to do the best they can, and we are trying to support the best they can. But now we are going to see another advent of another culture coming in. We are going to see so many kids getting into alcoholism.
Yeah.
We are going to see a lot of mental challenges. We are going to see already there's a lot of domestic violence. This is a gentleman who was used to passing by for a drink or two and going home. Suddenly you're home, there are challenges. You want to buy a bottle of something as opposed to having 2 shots or 2 glasses of wine. So you're carrying that home. You want to finish these wines and spirit shops have actually come and packed right next to our restaurants. Some of them have opened right next to our establishment. So somebody will go and get drunk, walk into a restaurant to eat. If you find a drunkard in our restaurant,
you'll assume
because
that they
they've
drank
found a
there.
whole bottle, you would not know where they've had the drink.
Yeah.
So we're in a bad situation because this opening of wines and spirits, and I'll have haters out there, it's not going to help the situation.
Alice, can I ask, do we know of any country where these suggestions that you're making, the phasing of the opening or solutions, innovative solutions, have actually been arrived at, so that industries similar to yours have actually gone back, maybe not to full capacity, but at least that to a functioning capacity?
We are not saying that we must open, and we are pushing the government. You must open for us the restaurants, the bars, and you have to lift the ban. No, we are not saying that. Most countries who have reopened, you find there's a lot of discipline around it.
How do they ensure that this discipline is actually adhered to?
I'd say this. For instance, you have America is already complaining. They're closing. And they've tried, it's not worked. But because we understand our unique culture as Kenyans, we know that Kenyans will want to adhere to the rules. And if somebody comes to my restaurant and walks in and wants to eat and drink, we'll just limit it to just eating and then drinking what is required, and then we close because they have to leave by 7. So I don't know of any country right now that I can say off the cuff that has tried this and failed, but I'll specifically talk about Kenya. And I know America is suffering right now. I know South Africa is out on the streets at the moment. I know most countries are affected. This is something we didn't see coming. But all in all, we have to try and see ways on how we can help. We are not pushing the agenda that we must sell alcohol, no. We are pushing the agenda that can we actually be involved in this process so that we see how we run with it and how we can curb this. On one end, help this situation, and on the other end, help us survive our business. Because I can assure you, already the outlets that have closed, about 20% are not going to reopen. There are 20% outlets that did not open after the lifts of closure of the restaurant and the entertainment sector, because already loss of income and you sent your staff home, the rent, you cannot pay everything, so they opted to close. Then a very small percentage reopened and pumped in money. Then now they've closed. After they've closed, we've so far realized about 15 to 20% again are not keen on reopening. A lot of members are saying, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's wait for this thing to settle down. So there are different people react differently.
So it's collapsing an entire sector here.
Yes, I cannot go by best practices as of now because there's a pandemic. It's affecting the whole globe.
We want to take another quick break so we can open the
way.
phone lines. 0719-012-600. Any questions to the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurant Association of Kenya, PERAC, on this particular issue of closure, reopening, the closing of the pubs and entertainment spots. What exactly is happening in this sector, and what do you think the government should be doing, especially, and also the players in the sector? Good morning. It's 8 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600.
Mellow Spice.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
7 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, biggest conversation. City, what do you feel of, what Alice is actually really vehemently objecting to?
I think
the
the point
operation of wine and spirits.
The point she's making is an extremely valid one with regards to her business. But as a business person, I would suggest that you perhaps look for an alternate business that could make you money, because COVID isn't about to sort of like run away and get lost and disappear and vanish. And if you're waiting for COVID or the situation to sort of like present an ideal situation where the business as it was known would come back, then that may not be a good business policy. The policy should involve, think, business person, what else can I do if this isn't working as I thought it would? That's what I would say.
How do you react to that? I mean, you've already sunk in a lot of money into this one.
What did you say? 10 million shillings to put up an establishment like this.
And you've closed, and you don't have any other. I mean, for the last 6 months, you've not had an income. So you don't even have operating
And your
cash.
business requires individuals to be in that establishment to operate.
Look, I understand this. I'm not in that business. You asked me, I'm speaking hypothetically here.
We are pushing the hypothesis back.
Yes. The alternative would be to tell the government to intervene. Remember, my earlier question had been, what should the government do? That's where now their response would come in and say, the government should provide moratoriums. The government should provide tools that will enable such establishments to survive. Whether it's giving them direct cash, whether it's giving them rebates, whether it is reducing taxes, whatever it is. Because anything that large, in the absence of government intervention, they will go under.
But also, let's also be realistic here. The truth is that the government has not ordered the closure of restaurants. The government has basically only said, do not sell alcohol in these facilities.
Yes.
But people can come and eat.
It's like you have legs and you're being told walk with your hands.
People can come and eat. You can continue providing the same services for people who come and sit down and eat, or even move on to thinking, how can I deliver?
But Eric, there's a sector of that business, the bar and restaurant business.
Yep.
That business, it's a two-tier business. There's bar, it complements restaurant. There's a restaurant, it complements bar. Yes. If they were just bar, then of course then you close. There's no story there.
But also, Alice, like you said, about 40% or so is what comes from the bar, and then another 40 or so percent comes from the restaurant. And then the other comes from other services. So you're not really operating at zero. There's, there's the 40% of the restaurant, at reduced capacity, as well as a quarter of the 40% is what you...
Eric, there's the issue of even the seating capacity and the capacity to have clients is reduced, number one.
Yep.
Then you're fighting with costs, which aren't going down. Then you're fighting with just the number of people who actually come to seek your services. Man, it's not even a catch-22. It's something like a catch-88. It's difficult.
How I know we're coming to time on this, but Alice, in the future, I mean, we've heard even from CS Balala and talking about the tourism industry and saying it's time for people to get creative. Is there room for creativity in this sector where you see it? To be able to say, because I mean, it has been said that COVID might be here for a while. Some of these things that have been put in place would be around for a while as well. Is there room for creativity in this sector? Is there room to do something different, or is it just we have to wait until things return to normal?
Improve. And as you prepare to answer that one, let's also pick this one caller from Mombasa, Blackwater. Good morning.
Hey guys, how you guys been?
We
Good.
are well.
We're doing well, Blackwater.
Okay, now I'm in this industry, right? And I'm sorry to say, I will give the government and the CS what you call the bird on what they're doing.
Okay.
If we sit back and ask ourselves, since this restaurant, because it took us a lot of money to reopen. Now, you ask yourself, have you had an incident whereby they say that since the restaurant opened, they had a COVID incident at any of the restaurants? Because we abided by the 2-meter space and everything. We're doing at 40% to people. We're closing by 7 because the staff have to go home. You don't have an option on that. And remember, most of these restaurants we're talking about are big restaurants whereby meals are made as per order. So the client has to sit and wait. We're not talking about fast food. You see, we're confusing fast foods. Fast food in town and where you walk in, pick and go. But here you come, sit down, you want your nyama choma, you want your chicken choma, you want your goat, or and you have to sit and wait.
So bottom line, Blackwater, what you're saying is that you feel like you've been picked on.
I think we're picked on because of a situation of a one-man miscarriage. That's it.
Right.
So you come into the house, your son has made a mistake, and you cane all the kids in the house over an issue by an individual who was actually in a bar, not a restaurant.
Thank you, Blackwater.
That was a bar.
Let's hear Alice respond to this as we conclude the conversation. Alice.
Yes, to an extent, yes, I agree with him totally, because it's like road accidents happening. For instance, do you go and close the whole road because there's so many accidents, or do you deal with that particular incident of the accident? So we are frustrated. That's for sure. And to answer the previous question, we cannot reinvent the wheel into another sector. We are trained hospitality people. We are trained hoteliers. Sometimes this is what we know best. So we cannot just wake up and say, okay, fine, let me try this other avenue of business.
Right.
So,
Alice,
our
you wouldn't even
industry-
consider opening a wines and spirits?
why would I open a wines and spirits that already have a wines and spirits
You
in
already
my
have
bar?
a bar. Thank you, Alice.
I have a bar.
Alice, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. We wish you guys all the best as you continue engaging with your members and with the government as well on this, and with your clients. Alice Okoh is the national chairperson of the Pubs, Entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya. Have a good day, Alice.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Alice.
Asante. Top of the hour, CT Muga, today's proverb.
Today's proverb: silence and noise are brothers.
All right. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice.
spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right. We still have a little bit of traffic right around Mulongo heading towards the SGR. That's holding up there, and it's going to take some time to come out of it. Coming out of traffic hour in a short while, and also on Thika Road coming towards Survey, and then out further down towards the Pangani underpass, a little bit of a hold up, but it will be fine after that. So not much of an issue now. We still have the traffic on Bagathi Way for some reason. Don't know what is causing that, but we'll look into those details and see if we can find it. So guys, stay focused on the roads while driving this morning. Try to keep as safe as possible. If there's any more incidents with traffic, we'll let you know. Apart from that, you should be able to get and maneuver around where you're going without much of a headache. Don't forget Spice from KE. That's how you can reach it. We'll check in about half an hour how things are faring along, and you also help us out there in case you do see something.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Association, and the kind of dilemma that they're facing currently, and the kind of uncharted waters that they're finding themselves in, highlights what we're going to discuss in the next hour, which is about management and decision making in the business. When you're faced with a challenge, what do you do? And how quickly do you adapt to the new way of doing things? How do you recognize the new way of doing things? How do you even keep yourself engaged to think of the future new way of doing things and actually creating the new way of doing things yourself, so that you're in charge of this whole conversation and the narrative, in charge of the game?
So what you're actually saying is that if you're talking about this on a national scale, then you're saying that what on earth did the people who at independence, Kenyans, who were taking over the reins from the colonialists and now had to run the government, what on earth were they thinking?
Yep.
How did they go about making decisions to ensure that this idea, this dream that they had of a nation was actually fulfilled?
First of all, even to ensure that they understand the dream from the same perspective, all of them. Are you all reading on page 17 of this book called Dreams of Kenya? Not Dreams of My Father, Dreams of Kenya? Are you all on the same page? And then how do you actualize this dream? And how do you keep looking back and agreeing that, yes, we are still on the right path, or we have derailed a bit and we need to come back on the right path?
And then what do you do when you realize this?
When you realize, how soon do you make that decision that, we actually made a mistake, let's come back? We're going to speak to a man who has served in all these sectors, public sector, private sector, has been the helm of government, has also been at the helm of the corporate world. And this is Nicholas Nganga. For those that may not know, Nicholas Nganga is the immediate former chairman of Safaricom Limited, has served in that board for more than a decade. He was the chairman when Michael Joseph was CEO. He was chairman when the late Bob Collymore was CEO. He was chairman when Michael Joseph was interim acting CEO. He was chairman when we had a new CEO, until last week. So he's seen this company grow. But before that, and what many people actually do not know about Nicholas Nganga, is that he has served in other boards as well in the private sector. He also worked in government for many years, especially in the treasury and planning and such others. When Mwai Kibaki, at one point when Mwai Kibaki was Minister for Finance, the PS was a man called Nicholas Ngang. You remember that city?
I recall that vividly, but
When
even
you went to visit him for us.
no, but of interest is that how is it that one actually got to that particular position? Because to get to the point of, because that's the pinnacle, by the time you're a permanent secretary in a ministry,
Yeah.
you're the senior most civil servant in that particular ministry. You are the boss. So how does one get to the
there.
point where they actually land? And before they get there, what on earth did they do? And how did they start?
Who did they know?
Well, there's always that little detail of who did they know. Or perhaps you should ask, what did they actually do
Yeah.
to stand out?
To stand out.
Yes.
Nicholas Ganga, thank you very much for speaking to us. Good morning.
Good morning.
As you can tell, we have a lot of excitement in preparing to speak to you, because there are very many things that we hope that we are going to be able to learn from this conversation. So let's just start from what CT is asking. So by the time you are serving as a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, in the Ministry of Health, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what is it that you have done to stand out and get to that point? Just take us through your journey in public service.
Well, I hope I can hear you a little bit better if you speak a bit louder. To start with, one doesn't just wake up and you find yourself a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Yep.
This is the result of a progression of service in lower levels of government. I started working for the government in 1962 as a district officer. I worked through various ministries, the Ministry of Land Settlement and Water Development, Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Ended up as a deputy secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and then progressed there to deputy permanent secretary and then to permanent secretary. So, as I say, it's a progression. It's not something that you wake up and find yourself in.
Tell us about the time when you were in the Ministry of Natural Resources.
I was in the Ministry of Natural Resources for a very brief time, from 1963 to 1964 as an assistant secretary. It was a very interesting thing because I was particularly keen on matters relating to water development. And one of the things I remember most vividly, first, that there was very little attention being given to water as a major natural resource that required a combined and well-regulated framework of development. So there were different bits of it being done by different ministries, and I just saw that the opportunity there. As a very young officer, suggested that all those little bits and pieces could be put together and form a Ministry of Water Development. And I did that with the help of a couple of expatriate officers who were in other ministries and could see the same problem that we saw of a gap in structure.
You're saying you did this as a young officer. How young were you?
I would say at this time I would have been something like 25 years, 26 years.
Really? So you became a DO in your teens?
Sorry?
You became a DO in at a very young age, actually.
Yes. We qualified from university in those days at around 23 years. So I became a DO at about 24 years.
I think that story is actually very interesting. That we're talking about a junior officer, a very young person in their mid-20s, who sits and comes up with an idea and thinks this is the best way that our country can progress. And you take it to your seniors, and your seniors sit down and they listen to you. I mean, this is something that very many young people nowadays, or even those who are working, older people in government nowadays, will express as frustration. Ideas never being listened to.
Okay. Yes, it was a different type of time, and incidentally, that wasn't the only time I ever did that. I can tell you, I did practically the same thing later in the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. But at that young age, we were a new bunch of officers from university thrown into the maelstrom of transition from a colonial administration to a local administration, and literally thrown in at the deep end. And you had to swim as fast as you could and learn as quickly as you could. The good thing, and this people must always remember, is that the colonial officers were able and were willing to actually listen to young African officers, much as maybe they resented the fact that we were taking their places. But they were quite willing. I had very, very good relations with all the colonial officers that I dealt with, and there were many. So it was a different time, and I agree it is a pity that young people are perhaps not being listened to as much as they would like to be. But there is also an approach question. If you want to be listened to, you got to approach things in the correct manner.
Expound on that. I mean, because that appears to be the crux of the matter.
There is a bit of a problem about perceptions today. There is a feeling that older people who are in positions like the ones I've held got there somehow by luck and good fortune, or they were favored. There is a terrible misconception today that you only get a position if somebody knows you, or if somebody promotes your interest, rather than showing your own merit. So if you approach this by with a jaundiced look, and you're trying to force your views and opinions on people, you will not get very far. I have one principle that I would like to tell young people, and it is: don't put in your CV something you cannot support in a live interview. Don't throw your weight around, because there may be a heavier weight than you around. So approach this with an element of humility and wanting to learn, and people will be willing to listen to you.
Do you think this was a principle that you used at that time? I mean, qualifying from university at the age of 23, and then becoming an officer in government, and then moving, well up the ranks. Do you think this is a principle that you applied that then gave you success?
One of the things that really I now look back and see is that everywhere I worked, quite apart from listening to those who knew better than I did, was I could perhaps identify what I call gaps. In every organizational setup, however well structured and managed, you always find gaps. today people call them inefficiencies or something else. But if you can identify gaps as you go along and look for ways of filling them, and make other people accept that there is a gap either in knowledge or in approach or in structure, you get listened to very easily. And this was perhaps a very major part of what I did in the public service, particularly in the earlier age. So one should really look for opportunities, not just try to take over what somebody else is doing, because they may be doing it quite well, and you are not going to be able to replace them in a very short time. So look for what they are not doing.
Carve out
and
your
do
own
that.
niche.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, call it a niche, call it a gap, but play a role that seems to be additional to the values that organization stands for.
Would you say that you succeeded in your positions in government for the country?
Would I see?
Would you say that you succeeded in the positions that you worked in for government?
Yes, I would say I succeeded in the positions I held in government, and I think those that worked with me recognized my success. One thing that doesn't always come out is that in 1979, I was honored by the government and awarded the Order of the Burning Spear as an elder. If this is not recognition of success, I don't know what is.
Indeed, it is. I mean, it's a big one, and they say that this is among the highest that you get as somebody who's serving in public service, elder, and then you get to the chief.
Well, I haven't got
Let's just say that somebody,
control of that.
somebody somewhere turned their back again and forgot that Nicholas Ganga really has moved on from being an elder to a certain higher level. Of course, this is a recognition. No, I'm just campaigning for you, Nick. I'm just saying.
You can look at it this way.
Yeah.
I was awarded that in 1979 for service that I had done up to that time.
True.
You can also now see what service, maybe not directly in the civil service, but
To the
what
country.
other service I've done since 1979 in the public sphere. And I would like to say that I think there is a bit of contribution I've made in that period also.
Very modest of you to say a bit. You have served in the boards of various organizations. You are chairman of G4S Security, Khan General. You've served in Kakuzi. You've served in various other capacities in the public sphere, as you call it, since 1979. What is it that drives you? When they approach you and they tell you, Nick, we'd like you to serve in our board. We'd like you to help steer this organization. What makes you say yes? And are there some that you've actually turned down and said, just looking at the culture of this organization from what I see from outside, no?
Let me perhaps suggest that what I have done has been basically by invitation from people that have seen what I've done elsewhere. I've had maybe one or two invitations that I did not accept.
Yeah.
But all the ones that I've done have been done because first, they are things I thought I would enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, because I thought there were things where I could contribute to some extent and I think I have contributed.
Those that you say you enjoy doing, just looking at some of them, you have steered the safari rally in the country. You've steered the Kenya Golf Union. Okay, golf, I can see you enjoy golf. Explain safari rally and you enjoying.
I had an interest in motorsport very early. I enjoyed driving, although I have a little hiccup at the moment. I'm not able to drive at all, and it feels almost like prison because I love driving myself around.
Mm-hmm.
And so by 1968, I had joined the Kenya Rally Drivers Club. I had had a few tries at motorsport, a little bit of rough track racing. I had done a couple of rallies, local rallies, and I finally ended up entering the East African Safari Rally. Didn't get very far on the road, but it was a good effort with a driver. The late Peter Shiuka was my driver. I was co-driver, and we made an effort at that. So I was in motorsports. I enjoyed that, and through that I was then around 1985 invited to join the Automobile Association. I was soon made vice chairman of the Automobile Association, and I became the chairman of Safari Rally Limited. And I was chairman of Safari Rally Limited for 9 years.
Mr. Gaga,
overseeing nine safaris.
Mr. Gaga, the question I want to ask is, prior to you and Mr. Peter Shiuka, the late Mr. Peter Shiuka, actually entering the East African Safari Rally, had any other Africans attempted that particular feat?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. There were many, in fact, more accomplished drivers. I wish I could remember their names now, but yes, there were others, Motuge Toi and somebody else. Trying to remember their names, but there were others who had tried.
They had tried.
And Peter Shiuka had tried once before with somebody else.
Now, as for the chairmanship of the Safari Rally Limited, had there been any African prior to your chairmanship?
No. No, there wasn't.
And how many Africans have we had since?
I honestly can't remember because there were mixes. There were some Africans, some people of other races. So it's been a mix. So can't remember them.
I want to take you back to your time in the Ministry of Tourism.
Yes.
And you mentioned that in the same way that you had purposed your activities in the Ministry of Natural Resources, you applied a similar diligence in this ministry. What are the things that you and your teams did in the Ministry of what was it called then? Tourism and what did we call it then? Tourism.
It was tourism and wildlife at that time.
Yes.
Yes. And the thing that I was referring to was the fact that as I was under secretary at that time, and we had great problems with wildlife side because there were two organizations. There was what was called the Game Department that purportedly looked after wildlife that was not in the national parks. And there was a national park organization which was by statute semi-independent. And there were conflicts all the time between these two departments. and we couldn't get them to have a unified strategy for management of wildlife. So I sat down, looked at their laws, and picked out what was common. Suggested that the two be combined into one Department of Wildlife Management. And I put up a paper. The minister agreed. He was actually very happy with it because he had experienced this problem. And it was taken up, and we formed a Department of Wildlife Management, what you might call the precursor of today's KWS.
So it was born somewhere on, on the mind of Nicholas Nganga, just looking at what's happening and thinking, you know what, we need a solution to this.
He saw a gap.
So seeing the gap constantly and thinking, you know what, instead of joining any of these sides
or doing what everybody else has been doing.
What everybody else has been doing is coming up with an idea and seeing that this idea helps to better manage wildlife in the country. Indeed, this is what we call trailblazing.
Well, it is, but tell me, is it, Mr. Nganga, is this the same sort of thinking that you would say that you carried with you into the corporate world?
Okay, yes, in a sense, but there are differences, of course, between the public sector and the corporate world. In the public sector, there isn't the sense of immediate, outright, and agency of competition. But in the same sphere, you can also see even in this sphere, you can also see the same concept of gaps, things that people are not doing. Yet you step in and suggest that you could do things differently. But it is more difficult to do that in the public, in the private sector than in the public sector.
I want us to take a quick break, Nicholas Nganga, as we take a look at weather and then traffic and continue this conversation. What we're having this morning is basically a profile interview, looking into the life and the works of Nicholas Nganga, who has served in public service. Says first started working for the country in 1962 as a district officer, rose through the ranks, through various ministries, up to the highest level of permanent secretary. Served as permanent secretary in ministries of foreign affairs, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health. Also worked in various other capacities in the public sector, and then also moved into the private sector, where he has contributed immensely to very many things. Chairman of the Safari Rally Limited for 9 years and overseeing 9 safari rallies, participating in the East African Classic as a co-driver, getting into the boards of various private sector organizations, steering bodies, and until recently, he's still a member of very many boards and also chairing several boards. But until recently, he's also the chairman of Safaricom Limited, where he served for another 13 years at the helm of this particular board. This conversation with Nicholas Nganga continues. Any questions, any comments, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And then at some point, we'll open up the phone lines if you've got any question that you'd like to ask him directly. 0719 012 600, 29 minutes past 9.
Spice FM, Malindi. The weather with Spice FM.
Warming up in Nairobi just a little bit and the clouds disappearing. Mostly sunny conditions at 17. We'll see highs of 24 and coming down to a low of 12 today with a bit of haze later in the afternoon. And in Njeri at 17 degrees, we'll see showers later, highs of 23 and lows of 13. Sunny conditions in Nakuru will change by rains in the afternoon with highs of 23 and lows of 13. It's 16 and mostly cloudy in Eldoret this morning. There's a chance of thunderstorms later with highs of 19 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 22, highs of 27 and lows of 19 degrees in Kakamega, and it's mostly sunny Going to wet conditions in the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 15. The showers will come in strong in Mombasa later on, highs of 28 and lows of 22. Malindi also will follow in the same fashion with highs of 28 and lows of 23. Kampala is partly cloudy at 21 degrees. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 17 with showers in the afternoon. Dar es Salaam will also be wet this afternoon with highs of 30 and lows of 21. 9 degrees in Johannesburg right now. It's mostly sunny, and those sunny conditions will last most of the day with highs of 19 and lows of 4. And Lagos will see showers with highs of 28 and lows of 23. We'll take a last look into Europe now, where it's 20 degrees in London, highs of 31 and lows of 17. Paris also will see a warm day with highs of 34 and lows of 18. And we'll wrap things up in in New York, where the Hurricane Isaiah is still making some serious moves here, highs of 29 and lows of 22.
Mellow Spice.
All right, some heavy traffic on Waiaki Way. Higher up there, though, if you're using the Kino-Kikuyu Road, there's heavy traffic at Uthiru, so you want to be careful. In and outbound for some reason. We don't know what is causing that yet. So please let us know if you do what might be the problem. There was an accident last night on the Taita Taveta Voi Road, and there's an individual who cannot be located right now. The vehicle is still a mess, and his documents are there. We're going to share that information on Twitter, and you can get that if you do know who it is, to let people know that there was that problem. Okay, so Mombasa Road is looking a lot better. Everybody's asking what's going on Waiaki Way. Close to Zero, there's heavy traffic. We don't know the reason why, but we'll find out in a short while. Coming off Thika Road is much better, and traffic seems to have ended in most parts for now, likely to pick up later on in the evening. Not to forget, Spice FM KE. Keep in touch just in case.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
28
FM,
minutes to the
Nairobi.
end of the show. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Broadcasting on Spice FM and also worldwide, www.spicefm.co.ke. Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, where we live stream audio visual. This morning's conversation is basically a profile interview. We are looking back at the life and times of Nicholas Nganga, who has served in public service, who served in the private sector as well. And we're titling this conversation this morning, Discipline, Fairness and Integrity in Public and Private Service. I mean, and it's very important that we bring in those words, because just so far in the last 28 minutes that we have been speaking with Nick, you can pick out some things that, get into service, get into public service, and look for the opportunity. Ensure that you wake up every morning and you're saying, I'm going to make a difference.
Well, the fundamental difference is look for the opportunity to improve the service you're in. Not to improve your lot.
Not to improve your life.
Yes, which seems to be the mantra by which many people who are in public service right now seem to live by. Yes.
It's to look at the opportunity, not where you can steal, but look for opportunities where you can
make a difference.
Serving in a ministry and seeing, all right, so this is environment and natural resources, but we've got very many others. We've got water, we've got all, and come up with an idea. Let's consolidate all this and create a ministry that encompasses all this. And that idea, as a young person in the age of 25, you take to your bosses and your bosses look at it and say, yes, we can restructure the government based on the ideas of a brilliant young man. Another one is, just like he said, serving in another ministry and seeing there's a lot of conflict between various organizations. These guys are managing wildlife that's not in national parks. These ones are managing wildlife that's in national parks. Look, there's conflict. What's
and
the
it's
solution?
not necessary.
It's not necessary. Let's come up with one body that manages that. To date, we have the Kenya Wildlife Service, and then we go back and see all right, this was what was happening then, and this is what somebody looked and saw a solution is required and came up with a solution.
Saw the gap and then sought to find a solution to ensure that that gap was filled.
Indeed. And Nicholas, just before we went to the break, CT had asked you the difference now between serving in the public sector and serving in the private sector. You had highlighted one of the main ones is that the public sector is not under the pressure to make more money.
Or to compete, really.
To compete. So how does this then translate in serving from that kind of organization to serving in the private sector where it's all about the bottom line and shareholder value?
Okay, let me first clarify that most of my experience in the private sector has been at the level of chairman.
Yep.
In other words, it's a board role rather than an executive role. Although I had a little experience running a government corporation that was commercial. The difference really is that you have to make decisions much more quickly. You've got to study your ecosystem much better in the private sector and to be a little more focused. In the public sector, you can actually look at a very wide range of things that impinge on your policy, because every policy of every ministry has some kind of relationship with every other aspect of government. But when you are in the private sector, you have a much more focused strategy. You have to deal with issues more rapidly and quickly. You've got to be more agile in decision making and to understand your field very much better than perhaps everybody else. That's the only way you can become a leading corporate. If you understand your market better, you understand your people better, you understand the needs of your market, and you design your strategies and policies in a more focused way.
Looking at the you talked about it, serving in an advisory capacity on boards in the corporate sector. And it obviously requires an element of wisdom in order to give advice or in order to lead a company in a certain way. Do you think that your experiences from the public service then influenced the role that you then now played in the corporate sector?
It does, to the extent that at the end of the day, what you're dealing with is people. Decision making is not about some something that you can't see.
Inanimate, yes.
It's basically about people. It's about how you can influence people's thinking and their tastes, their wishes, and their ambitions. And as long as you have learned to deal fairly with people and in a genuine manner, in an authentic manner, to meet needs, there is a commonality and a convergence of approaches between the public and the private sector. And as I said, the basic difference is that in the public sector, you are looking at a wider achievement. In the private sector, you are looking at both your top line and your bottom line, and looking at what facilitates your achieving your objectives. But you must never forget that it's all about people. At the end of the day, it is how people view the service that you're providing or the product that you're providing that will make the difference.
You say that the capacity you have held in the boards that you've represented as chairman has been advisory. I thought that boards were supposed to direct policy.
I'm not quite sure that I use the word advisory myself.
Maybe it's my colleague who used the word advisory, and I have decided to pin that word on you.
I wouldn't see my role in a board, especially in the capacity of chairman, as being advisory. It's a leadership position. You're supposed to be like a compass. You are the one trying to get people to think with a common objective. People have various different approaches.
Yeah.
You are expected to put all these people's thoughts together, see what is the most advantageous and commonly accepted strategy, and you ride with that. You can't just sit there and be advisor. What would you be advising about?
The corporate or the private sector is reputed to be not just competitive but cutthroat. How does one survive for the years that you've survived in a company that is touted as one of the best on this continent for this long?
There are two aspects to that question, and they are rather different. How I have survived is one thing, is different from how Safaricom has survived. Safaricom has grown largely because of a very early recognition of the role that people can play, because communication is, after all, about people, and Safaricom started as a telecommunication company. And as we went along, we found, again, you might say it is gaps, like I said earlier, areas which were ignored and not very well catered for. We were helped enormously by development of technology, the availability of not only technological platforms, but also the devices improved and became much cheaper, and so on and so forth. So as we went along, we were looking at what is it the people want, and what is it that they are not getting. What is it that you can do with this little gadget that has access to a platform that connects it to other, and so on and so forth. So this is how products like M-Pesa came up. Is there something that we can do to assist people who are not getting this kind of service? And of course, once you establish your ability or capacity in an area like that, then you tend to grow and grow fast. Don't ask me why others didn't do it at the same rate, because I don't know. I really think that one would have expected them to. But that is Safaricom growing on basically appreciating the needs of the people, what people want, and trying to provide that. As for my own stay at Safaricom, it's got to do a lot with what I might call my style of leadership, which, as I said earlier, is I try to be as authentic as I can be. I try to be very fair. I listen to people. By the way, that to me is a critical, fundamental thing, that if you are a leader, you are not the holder of wisdom. You are there to, yes, you use your own capability and wisdom to tap the wisdom of other people. You listen to other people. Nobody's idea is unimportant.
But as you do that, Chairman, and you're sitting there and people maybe are presenting very divergent opinions which they hold very dear, and they're arguing and they're willing to die for those opinions, how do you make the decision on what direction to take?
You continue to get their thinking together. You glean from what they are saying what is of common interests. At the end of the day, when people, if you manage people's thinking and contribution talking well enough, you're going to find that people are trying, if they are genuine, people are trying to get to the same objective, but it's their ways of approaching that are different. So you keep on trying to bring them back to the objective and asking, how do you think of the other person's idea? What's wrong with it? And eventually, if you've got the capacity or the capability to listen and draw people's thinking closer together. In other words, I hate using the word compromise, because compromise has a tendency to imply that you are sacrificing objectives.
You're ceding, you're losing something.
Collectivity of ideas. And you bring people together that way, and eventually you arrive at perhaps, in fact, the best solution, because it has got inputs from many kinds of wisdom.
Indeed, the success and failure of many organizations has often been pinned on the board. And if we look at very many organizations in the country, both in the public and private sector, parastatals and listed companies and non-listed companies, when things start going wrong, people still head back and question the board and the decisions that the boards were making. From your experience, I mean, you're a Kenyan, you have served in various capacities, in various boards, you have also seen and witnessed for yourself companies taking the wrong turns. What is it that affects that leadership at the board level that says a company just going downwards, spiraling downwards?
Well, that's a very broad question, because no company goes down the same way as the other, although there may be common factors that influence this. But one of the things that I personally think is causing problems now is the inability to look at a common goal, and a great deal of intrusion of personal interests, lack of the values of governance around conflict of interest, intrusion of external factors like you may say political factors and that kind of intrusion. All those things, if allowed to come into the deliberations of a board, will lead to lack of clear foresight and clear strategy. And what we will have then is basically infighting, sometimes overt, sometimes covert, that removes from the board the ability to lead, to give direction.
Of course, at Safaricom, Nicholas, that must have tried to enter into the board or into the leadership of the organization. For Safaricom, such a big organization making so much money, those were constant threats. How did you keep them out of the door?
By having first a very, very strong board, a board that was very clear about its role and what it was required to do, which is to lead the company. A board that understood, had actually all the competencies. When you talk about technology, finance, legal, all the competencies were available in the board. And above all, a protective board, a board that protected the management. Talking about management, Safaricom has perhaps the strongest professional team, technological team, in this country. It's a very, very strong team with very good leadership. So when everybody is working together and in unison, and you have, to the extent possible, complied with all governance requirements, then you're in a position to tell people, please leave me alone or let me get on with things, because your intrusion is only going to interfere with this. Let me add here a couple of things. The regulatory frame in any business is very important, and you have to understand fully the regulatory framework in which you are working or you are trying to manage your business, and manage that properly. Have people who understand every bit of law that affects you, and make sure that you are complying with them, and that these people are also capable of explaining to whoever raises any question why they think or they feel that they are compliant. So as long as you are compliant, you are clear, and you are observing the rules of good governance, and you have you are observing your integrity and ethical issues, then you are in a position, in a very strong position to say, we don't think that your intrusion into this is going to be toward value.
Nicholas, you've been very busy for the last, many years. So what's going to be occupying your time now, and what are the things that then you will be doing or that you're interested in now that will take up your time?
Yes, as you say, I've been busy because Safaricom is not the only thing I've been doing. There are other things that I do. Companies where, as was said earlier, I am either on the board or I lead as chairman. Then I've got my own family and business affairs to look after. I'm not a wealthy person, so I don't have a huge portfolio of companies.
Perhaps, if you'll allow me to ask you a specific question, what interests you in terms of business? Something that occupies your mind and even your heart, personally.
What occupies me?
What occupies your mind and heart personally in terms of business?
I think my highest values are, first, obviously, family. I care a lot about my family. I care very much about the right things, people doing the right things. I learned from a very good educator when I was from primary school to 7 years in the same school, and the mantra was do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because of laws or rules or punishment, but do the right thing because it's right. Don't try to pad it with things, with other things. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong.
And that's it.
So that is a fundamental driving part of my life.
Which brings us to that question, because the issue of integrity is crucial, especially when we're talking about our country and where we are at right now. Some of the questions that are coming in are have you ever been bribed? Have you taken a bribe? And how have you, in the cases where assuming that you've rebuffed a bribe, how do you rebuff a bribe?
I have been offered bribes directly at least 3 times. People who said, if you get me a contract to supply this and that to that ministry, we'll put you on our boat. I said, well, fine, thank you very much. I don't want to be on your boat. I've been told by a person, a friend actually, but now unfortunately deceased, came to me. There was a project, and he says, I've been given this sort of float to make sure that the project succeeds, and I'm told you are the only one objecting and wanting to see a feasibility study. Is there a way we can get you to give up this idea of a feasibility study? I said no. Keep your float. What I want is a feasibility study, and I'm going to insist on it. So these things have happened to me, and I've said I can't live without that kind of thing. So, yeah, I've never accepted a bribe in my life.
We want to thank you very much, Nicholas, for speaking to us. Nicholas Nganga is immediate former chairman of Safaricom PLC. He still serves in various other capacities, in various boards of various organizations. He has served in the public service for many years. What would you like to tell people who are listening to you this morning? I mean, on the issues that you've said, integrity, on good leadership, on serving your country in whatever capacity.
I think all I would like to say is it's sad that people think that anything and everything is negotiable. They think that you have to offer inducement and so on and so forth. I believe the country can be managed and run without this level of inauthentic behavior. And I would just appeal to my country people, my countrymen and women, to try and see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is this country and its future, and the future of our children. Resources are not going to be exhausted. Money is not going to be exhausted. It will always be there. Don't try and grab hold of it like it's going to come to an end.
Expiring.
Land will always be there. You don't try and grab it like it's going to go somewhere. So these things are available for us all to share. And if we have the spirit of sharing the common good, knowing that as a person, as an individual, you cannot really survive entirely on your own just because either you have got a lot of money or a lot of land.
Yeah.
if you can see the common good rather than the selfish interests, then you will be a good citizen and the country will be a good country to live in.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Nicholas, for speaking to us, and we wish you all the best in the
Thank you.
years to come. Asante sana for speaking
Thank
to
you
us.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you,
is
sir.
the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We come to the end of the show. Very interesting conversation. Just say goodbye then with your closing remarks on that.
Definitely things to aspire towards. Goodbye. The conversation continues tomorrow.
Oh, it's Thursday, is it?
It is
Okay, then let the conversation continue
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
As we say goodbye, today's proverb, as we wind up on that.
Silence and noise are brothers.
Silence and noise are brothers.
Yes.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Noise.
Shake, shake, shake,